good for the dynamic family unit. And I think that we need more of it, not less of it. And I think that men have a duty to shirk the pornography and the bullshit and the kind of progressive selfish nonsense and start families. It is a duty that we have. It's not just some imperative which relies on your own personal choice. Your ancestors, most of them could not actually spread their seed. Only somewhere between 40% of men traditionally have been able to even reproduce. Most men have not been able to do that. That's why men have almost twice as many female ancestors as they do male ancestors. So now when you have kind of the perfect arrangement, which has come up, where you have an almost perfect equilibrium in the population between men and women, you can actually have one wife per man, which, I mean, this is fantastic news for men, but seemingly within the what I call degen pickup artist arena, they seem to really shirk that off and push it away for sexual exploitation and for basically just selfish hedonism. And I think that should stop. And I think that that's not a masculine way to go about life. So the other thing is I want to bring this up kind of in the opening, which is feminism. So I would like to point out my wife for a moment. My wife has almost single-handedly changed the narrative throughout the entirety of YouTube politics and Twitch politics when it comes to feminism. Her research, her books, and her debates have now been adopted by academics globally. And her book seems to have become a must-read for people who are against feminism. When you kind of look at this, you start to understand that the reason she did this was because she had a duty to do so. Her duty was to make sure that her daughters were not set up in the same trap of feminism as so many other men's daughters have been in the last 100 years. I'm always hard on feminists on this channel. I beat the holy tar out of them every single chance that I get, and they deserve every bit of it. But I think that the degens who are throughout the manosphere also deserve to take their licks on this, because in many ways they contribute to the same form of feminism that they're trying supposedly to stop or that they're trying to push against. And I think that that basically all of them have a share in the modernity of what I call the great fucked up society, which is what we're living in right now. So I'd like to push back on a lot of your ideas about marriage, about a lot of your ideas about, sexual exploitation and things like this, which I consider to be quite frankly revolting. So I'm glad that Markus is here. Markus, don't take any of this personally. I'm going to be very hard on you tonight, just like I am everybody. But that's just the way I am. And with that, I'll turn it over.
Richy, you're
up. Yeah, it wasn't quite clear. Like, I got both of those propositions, but so
we're just going to focus on the sex before marriage for now, and then we'll move on to the second one later.
Okay. Man, now you're fucking me up because I had a whole nother thing. All right, that's all right. Generally speaking, the promiscuity before marriage, even outside of a Christian faith standard, it leads to almost effectively, so long as there are no contract laws in marriage, it leads to almost the same thing as polygamy in other societies. That is to say that a large percentage of the men, or rather a small percentage of the men, are getting the majority of the available sex. And what that leads to is societal dysfunction. You have a large percentage of men, maybe 30% of them, that are totally sexless, have no prospects for marriage, etc. This is one of the reasons that polygamy is effectively banned in most Western society. It's sort of like teetering in Utah. It's like sort of a misdemeanor now because of the Mormons, But by and large, in Western societies, polygamy is banned because of this outcome. When you have a huge percentage of the population of young men with testosterone and angst without an outlet to no prospects whatsoever to obtain sex or women or marriage, they do violent things. They get increasingly desperate. It's totally societally destabilizing, and Yeah, I mean, just if we're talking strictly about marriage, I think that's probably the number one point that I'd stick on.
Okay. Do you want to go first, Marcus, or do you want me to do it?
You go, man.
Cool. So, Richie, I pretty much agree with everything you said. We're just going to have disagreements on the prescription. Andrew did a lot of virtue signaling in his speech, but at the end of the day, we can all agree that sex is a key part of marriage. Dead bedrooms are a big cause of divorce. Getting married without having sex is like starting a business partnership without ever meeting that person. It can work out, but the odds are lower. There's many women that you will not be compatible with sexually and otherwise, and if you blindly ignore that and get into a marriage, which is definitely risky for any successful man, then you're just setting yourself up for a higher chance of failure.
Cool. Yeah, I agree with Alex. I think you want to do everything you can to make sure you have the right person before you're getting married. I think you need to find out as much as you can about them. I think you should live with them. I think you should have sex with them. I think sex is a very important part of how you're going to interact with another person romantically. And to forego that, I think is a little risky for me. In terms of what Richie was saying, I would argue a little bit here in terms of, I think if you do have a society with a lot of casual sex, opposed to just having a society where everyone is monogamous, I think you're still going to have a percentage of men that are just clueless with women, having bad relationships and bad marriages. So I think actually encouraging people to learn to be in relationships, to learn to have better sex, to learn to interact with their partner in better ways is what's going to help that, as opposed to just say, all right, everyone, you need to partner up.
Cool. All right, so we can get into the open panel portion of it. Ashley, we all trust you, so moderate. Step in when you see necessary. I guess I'll start with this, Richie, because you
well,
mentioned
I'd like to push back if you don't
well,
mind.
I haven't even heard anything yet.
Yeah, but you did in your opening statement. You talked about sexual compatibility, and that's
Okay.
bullshit. So let's start with sexual compatibility, where you start off in this debate saying that you think that that's extremely important, but you negate to express that sexual compatibility with a partner grows over time, regardless of if you've had sex with them before you got married. So when you talk about sexual compatibility, that's something which increases over time anyway. You don't have to go and take the woman's virginity before you marry her in order to have a successful marriage. In fact, the stats say otherwise, don't they, Alex? The stats say that if you marry a virgin, your marriage actually turns out to be pretty good most of the time. So sexual compatibility builds with two people over time. It's not just, oh, well, I must fuck her, because if I don't, there's just no way for me to know that I'll be sexually compatible with a woman. By the way, you're sexually compatible with almost all women. Okay, almost all men are sexually compatible with almost all women. The plumbing is universalized, Alex.
Okay, let me respond to everything you said. So there's some half truths in what you're saying, all right? That yes, you can build sexual compatibility over time, but if you're really not sexually compatible, you need a solid foundation to build on. So if a girl is super into like kinky BDSM roleplay and you're super vanilla, you're probably not gonna find a middle ground. There needs to be that compatibility. There needs to be that chemistry. In terms of the second thing you said about divorce, when you actually look into the data, it does seem that for women, having more sexual partners increases her chance of divorce. But for men, having more sexual partners does not change your risk for divorce.
Yeah, but it's a good thing that marriage has two people in it, huh, Alex? Men and women. So the stats apply to both of them. And if the stats apply negatively to one, then they apply negatively to both. That's one.
Because we're giving advice to men, not to women.
Yeah, well, but the advice to men is still going to focus around, if they're married, the same advice you'd give to women, because a marriage takes a man and a woman, last time I checked, Alex. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing, when you're talking about, again, sexual compatibility, if this is all porn degen brain coming out of your mouth. Well, what if I'm into kinky shit? Well, if you weren't inundated with pornography being directly beamed into your fucking skull 24 hours a day, likely you would not be into all that BDSM shit.
This seems like someone who's never really had good sex thinking that he knows a lot about sex.
Oh, gee, that's a great burn. Hey, great burn.
Yeah,
sounds like somebody who hasn't had a lot of sex. Alex,
sweet.
The idea that
stop.
like there's no such thing as sexual compatibility.
I know that you're a degen, so we have to do this. I'll just do it right off the bat. I've had sex almost every day of my life for 16 fucking years straight,
including before marriage.
Well, in my particular case, yes, I did. But so what?
So
it doesn't make me a hypocrite to say that I was a recovering drug addict and so then advocate against drugs, Alex. That makes no sense. It's a bad argument. It's a stupid argument. I don't know where you came up with it.
Well, it seems like you want your cake and eat it too. So it's like, okay, I want to enjoy myself.
Just like the
before I get married.
recovering drug addict.
I'm gonna fuck all these girls. But now that I'm married, I'm just gonna say other guys shouldn't do it.
Okay,
can I
but
ask
that
that, Alex?
again, that's the same argument you would use against the recovering drug addict. You'd be like, "Well, you want your cake and eat it too. You got to go out
No,
and have
because
all the fun with the cocaine. How come
drugs-
I can't go have all the fun with the cocaine too? Because the person who was the former cocaine addict says because it's bad. You fuck. That's why.
Well, yeah, drugs have a negative impact on your life physically.
So does premarital sex.
How?
And there's no doubt that that's true. Well, we can go over all of them. We've already discussed STD rates. When you're talking about STDs, these are things which you just shrug off and pretend they don't even exist.
Yes,
that they're no big deal.
Andrew, there's things called condoms. You put them on your dick, and they prevent you from getting STDs.
They're not 100% effective. That's the one thing. And you yourself have admitted that you've contracted STDs, even though you wear condoms.
Well, this was before I started wearing condoms. This was when I was like in my mid-20s.
Oh, right. Just post that. No guys are getting
work, bro.
Yeah, right. No guys are getting any STDs, even though they're still they are, even though they're wearing condoms. Do you think that now,
really,
now, is
really
STDs?
It's really rare that someone puts a condom on properly and then they still get an STD. That's
okay, Alex.
Not as much chance of that as you do by getting hit by a car.
Okay,
Alex. You're going to drive to work, even though there's a chance a drunk driver can kill you.
I'll demonstrate this.
You're going to wear a seatbelt to
I'll just demonstrate it.
You're not going to drink. You're going to take reasonable precautions. But if you're someone who's really paranoid, you could also get an STD test before you have sex.
I'll demonstrate it, Alex. If you can right now, would you say that STDs are on the rise or on the decline?
I believe they're on the rise. Last time I checked,
they're on the rise. And so the thing is, though, is that the amount of training given to children now for how to protect themselves from STD is at an all-time high. So people know what protects them from STDs, and condom use and birth control. All of these things are also used more than they ever have been in history, yet STDs are still increasing. So
people know that exercise is more important than ever. We have enough information on that. Yet most of the country doesn't exercise. We know bad food isn't good for you. Yet a lot of people eat fast food. And the problem is that most of those guys, they're just not wearing the condoms, right? You can give people all the information in the world, but if you're not going to utilize that information, it's not going to help them, right? You can talk about any kind of epidemic, STDs, drug use, obesity, all of that is on the rise, even though we have more information than ever.
I think that's a bit of a symptom of pornography, basically. Like why is it acceptable to have having all these multiple partners? Increasingly, you have young women doing OnlyFans, doing like hyper degraded things because that's what gets them attention. But you had said earlier, it's like I believe Markus did that. We want to have multiple sexual partners because we want to make sure we're sexually compatible before marriage. But wouldn't that also ultimately tend to lead to more and more depraved sex?
No, I don't think so. My sexual preferences have been pretty stable for the last 10 years. I don't escalate in.
What do you mean by depraved sex?
Yeah.
Maybe that's a bad word for you guys because I don't want to do the whole theocratic thing, but more and more deranged thing. Like so naturally, men have this impulse to have sex with women. Men don't naturally have an impulse to have sex with their anuses, for instance, right? But because it's like promoted and you got a girl that's into it, maybe you think that like it just. Oh, well, I don't know, because I this girl loves giving me hickeys on my left eyelid, or like whatever it is, right? Like just it needs to have more and more of a sensationalist appeal because your ultimate goal effectively is hedonism. The pleasure that you are obtaining is the goal.
Richie, but you would agree that people hundreds of years ago had kinks, right? Or you would disagree with that?
Where do you think these kinks come from?
Not to the same degree. We know for sure what pornography, Markus, does to your brain. We know that it desensitizes you just like exposure to violence does. Overt exposure to violence will desensitize you to violent actions the same way that pornography desensitizes you when it comes to being able to sexually orgasm, among other things. And just like all forms of dopamine hits to your brain, you constantly need to graduate higher and higher and higher in order to receive the same amount of dopamine. Men were not reporting sexual dissatisfactions, or women at the same exact rates, not even close, since this data has been being compiled. Pornography is definitely a problem. It rewires your brain.
We all agree with you.
I think we can all agree that watching a shit ton of porn is going to degrade your sex life. I think we all agree with that. I don't think that those that are having premarital sex are watching less or more porn. I don't see the correlation there.
You're talking about two separate things.
If we can all agree that if we can all agree that
wait a second. Hang on. I'm sorry, Rich. I don't mean to cut in, but
you're good.
But I'm going.
I just want to know, because your argument, Alex, was indeed that sexual compatibility was that's the most important thing. It's necessary.
Nope,
Markus,
hang on.
Markus says the same thing.
I said it's
No,
important.
I never said it's the most important thing.
Okay, you said that sexual compatibility is indeed important.
Is
Okay,
indeed
at
important,
least
not the
it's
most
important.
thing.
Okay,
Correct.
so the thing is, man, is if we're looking at that, and your idea, which Alex said, is what if you have a different kink than that chick over there? Well, these kinks and this type of thing, that is probably something which comes from pornography. If you're not
Even if that's
exposed,
true, it doesn't change
Not
if
the
you're not
argument.
exposed to those things pre-pornography, how the fuck would you even know that they're a kink of yours? Makes no sense, bro.
You're making strawman arguments. No one here is advocating for porn. We agree. I think we would agree that some of that stuff is fueled by pornography. But there's a big difference between watching a shitload of porn and having sex with your partner. They're not the same thing.
You're not listening to me.
Now,
I didn't make
Andrew,
a straw
can I ask you
man
question?
argument.
Do you believe that people had kinks before porn?
Of course, but so what?
So that's what we're saying. Regardless of porn or not, people are going to have kinks. They're going to have preferences, even if it's not.
What about the
kinky, even
rates,
if it's
bro?
not preferences, right?
What about the rates?
But that's
The
not
rates
a
of
point. No one's arguing with you against that. It's a little bit of a red herring. Like, let's
It's
say
not a red herring.
it is, because we're all agreeing with you that porn is fucking shit up in general. But
Okay, but not really, because your sexual compatibility argument is to say you're putting the cart before the horse. You're saying, listen, what if you have all these weird, funky fucking kinks, and most of the time you wouldn't even know that those kinks existed if you didn't have access to the pornography showing you those
that's
things
what I'm
to begin
disagreeing
with.
I think if
Yeah,
we
precisely. Like,
completely
imagine like there
remove
was like a town
if you-
harlot in Rome that was like running around licking people's buttholes, and everybody.
Well, first of all, they did all
Some
kinds
guys
of
were into it, right?
First
It's
of all,
like
they did all kinds of fucked up shit in Rome and Greece. They were fucking like little boys.
right. Just as an example, right? Like, I don't know, maybe there's a town harlot or like an oracle told them that whatever.
I mean,
right?
they were doing. I think they were doing more fucked up shit in like ancient Greece than we do now. But yeah, I understand.
I don't think that the average person was actually doing mega fucked up shit, because a man's sexual drive.
That they were made love to.
A man's sexual drive is inherent in his biology. It's something that we were gifted and cursed with. Like, that's how we make babies, right? It's what makes us. It's what motivates us to do the right thing. Like, it's in our DNA. Licking buttholes is not. All right. Like, that's something that somebody was like got into and like told other people about. Like,
Ashley begs to disagree.
Yeah, I don't think you can really prove that there weren't kinks before porn. I agree that, sure, if people are watching a lot of porn, maybe they discover a little bit better what they like. Maybe it accelerates and they need a high level of the extremity of what they're doing. But to suggest that sexual compatibility wasn't an issue before porn, I think is crazy. I think even if you take vanilla people, you will find that they say they have bad sex with another vanilla person. Even if you take kink out of that completely, right? Some people just aren't compatible sexually. Like, I will still stand by that kink obviously adds to that. And if you're super kinky, it's going to be harder to find compatibility. But to suggest that everyone is compatible with everyone else, and the only reason they're not is because porn came about, I think is like ridiculous.
Well, then, Markus, why don't you explain to me, if sexual compatibility was such an issue, how come the divorce rates were pretty much non-existent inside of this nation for about 200 years?
Religion, social stigma.
Yeah, exactly. I think
so. I guess sexual compatibility was not such a highly important thing in comparison to your religious convictions or duties.
But a lot of those people were unhappily married. That's the thing.
Exactly.
Prove it. Prove that they were unhappily married. You son of a bitch. You have no evidence for that.
Prove that they were happily married.
It's your assertion. It's your assertion.
Happily married.
It's your assertion. You have to prove it.
In the 60s or 50s, there's an epidemic of a bunch of housewives taking insane amounts of drugs because they're so depressed.
No, there wasn't an epidemic of it. That's a lie.
There's an epidemic of it now.
There is now. Yeah, there sure is.
But that's the question. Let Markus answer the question, please. Thanks.
Yeah. So what you're telling me essentially is the only difference between now and I think you said 200 years ago or whenever it was, the only difference is that people are having premarital sex, and that's why everything is fucked up now. Is that what you're trying to say?
This is one of those like Kathy moments with Jordan Peterson. And even though I hate that Spurg, you're just trying to rephrase what it was that I was saying. What I'm saying is that there are many factors, but pornography absolutely accelerates them. But when you're considering, I mean, we would have to make this a way longer debate to talk about women's rights and all this stuff and like how it's like sort of been subverted. But I'm really more strictly concerned with with the prevalence or the acceptance of casual flings of sexual intercourse before marriage, the body counts. So for instance, the marriage rates in 1980, according to the U.S. Census Bureau, 60% of women were married at least one time, or they had their first marriage by the time they were 23. In 2015, almost a decade ago, this is before OnlyFans, it was 31 before they were first married. That's not even like children. That's like married, right? This is, if you both agree that marriage is conducive to raising healthy children, we have a lot more going on than just the pornography. Like this sex before marriage thing is a really big deal.
Well, Richie, you're actually agreeing with us. You're saying there's a lot more to it than pornography, and I agree. I would pose this hypothetical. Let's say
Nobody
you take,
disagreed, but this was the point of contention.
let's say we take a man and a woman. Neither one of them watches porn, and the man is into some real fucking kinky shit. He just likes to be super dominant. He likes to be violent, or not sexually violent, whatever. And the girl is super vanilla. She just likes to lay there and do nothing. Do you think those two are going to work out?
Do you think that's
First
common?
of all,
Yeah, that is actually fairly common.
Yeah.
First of all,
why don't you-
vanilla
hang
was
on, hang
actually
on,
an
hang on.
extravagant
This is another
flavor.
assertion. This is another assertion without evidence. Show me that it's common.
Well, I must have anecdotal evidence, but yeah. Also,
Right. So you have no fucking evidence. You have no evidence.
Here's empirical evidence. When they poll people who get divorced and they ask what's the cause of divorce, they say sexual issues were like, I think top 3 or top 4, something. They're high up on the list.
Yes, but the sexual issues that they're talking about are degradation due to other aspects of marital problems, which is why it's low on the list. Yes, in the in the polling for these things, when they're discussing them, they do indeed discuss that aspect of it. And most of the time, when they're talking about sexual degradation in marriage over time, it's a relationship between other stress factor issues within the marriage that leads to sexual dysfunction or cold bed or things like this. It's not a correlate. And here's why.
Well, yeah,
right? Men and women really like to have sex. You might not know this, but they really like to have sex. Okay. Men
I don't know
and
why you
women.
would think I don't know this. I have a girlfriend. I have sex all the time.
All right. Well, that's my whole point, though, is like they're not stopping the sexual intercourse due to the fact that they're not sexually compatible. It's due to contributing other stress factors. The number one reason women walk away from marriage is dissatisfaction with money, for the most part. That's the top reason. They normally report that it was irreconcilable differences, but it's generally over money. Money is
also
one
because
of the
they
big ones.
can, because there are no negative repercussions basically on their end. That's
either crazy. There's a lot of negative repercussions for women.
Dude,
they're either married to this. They're either married to the state, or they're married to in another aspect of the state. They get child support payments. So the ramifications, the negative ramifications of a woman getting married, are much less on the woman and on the family of the woman, which is sort of why this behavior is so acceptable nowadays.
We can agree that it's less. Sorry, we can agree that it's less compared to the man. We might agree with that, but to suggest that it's so small that it doesn't really matter and she will just get like divorced willy-nilly and married again and it doesn't matter, I think that's crazy. I think women that are getting married, it is a huge negative if they end up getting divorced, right?
Is it as huge of a negative?
Why are 80% of them
as huge? Exactly. Is it
why are they
as huge of a
always
negative as it was
initiated
40
by
years
women?
ago?
They're basically always initiated by women.
I can answer that.
Go ahead.
There's multiple reasons, right? One, I think, is that women typically have to go for the divorce. Men can kind of sit around, but if women have kids and they need the child support,
there's feedback going on in my ear.
Yeah,
actually, I'm getting the same.
And I think it's from maybe Richie. Richie, mute yourself real quick and let's see if it's from you.
Okay, let me mute myself. Sometimes I'm on.
Nope, it's not you. Hang on. Marcus, say something.
Yeah, I'm still getting it.
Yeah, I'm still getting it too. Alex, you try muting yourself now.
It's good on my end, but I'll try. Hang on.
All right.
Testing. I don't hear anything now.
Yeah, I don't hear it now.
It's on my end, but yeah, this always happens with the microphone. Let me see. Let me really quickly fix this, if I can. Audio reduce.
Sorry, Marcus, I didn't mean to cut you off, but that's super annoying.
Yeah, it always does this. I'll have to switch back to my regular audio, in which I'll be quiet. Okay, I'll make it work. Okay, I'll have to. Yeah,
you sound fine. You sound fine. But right, I'm still getting a test. Alex, say something.
Yo, what's up?
Yeah, no feedback loop now. We're good.
Okay. Yeah, I just have to go with my computer mic, which is a lot quieter. So I'm gonna just try to adjust and turn myself all the way up and turn you guys like 20% down, so it's more even.
You don't need to turn yourself up. You sound fine.
It's the same audio level because we were doing the
same audio level.
Okay.
Now it's
pretty much the same, yeah, to me.
Okay, cool. All right. No worries.
All right. So as I was saying, if women are initiating 80% of the time, which I haven't seen that stat, so I don't know how accurate it is, but let's assume it is, that doesn't indicate that they are better off or it's really easy for them just to divorce willy-nilly. I think it's probably easier for them or it's more beneficial for them compared to a man, but not compared to themselves being in a marriage. I think they're probably happier being in a marriage at first. And so I think that's the first thing. The second thing is the reason it's probably a little bit higher is that if you do split, women need to get a divorce for that child support, right? Whereas men can kind of just sit around and it's not a big issue or not a big rush for them. So I think that's probably the biggest reason it's happening. But either way, even if we do, I kind of do agree with you that it's a lot easier for a woman to get a divorce than a man. I still don't think there's a huge initiative for women and a huge incentive for them to be like, you know what, I think I'm just going to be happier marrying than divorce next year and marry again and divorce. I think that's crazy.
Markus, remember what I said when we did our call about the redirecting?
Wait a second. So Alex, debates and conversations evolve. So anyway, back to what Markus was saying. And by the way, we didn't redirect anything. This is a direct line of inquiry. So Markus, nobody said or nobody was even discussing which sex it's easier for to get a divorce. We're discussing whether or not one sex is penalized over the other once a divorce is initiated. In this particular case, it does appear that men are much more heavily penalized than women for the initiation of a divorce.
Yeah, I agree.
We all agree.
Yeah,
So
how's that? So hang on. So how's that not an incentive for them to get a divorce? Then it's not an incentive.
Okay, so if say we have a business agreement, right, between me and Alex from Playing with Fire, right, and maybe if I end that agreement, he will lose $2 million and I will lose $10 million, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be much worse for me. But at the end of the day, Alex doesn't want to lose $2 million either. So he's not going to do that. He's not going to break up from that agreement, essentially. So even though I'm much more, even does that make sense?
What if the business?
No, it doesn't make any sense.
I want to redirect back to what
that's nice that you want to redirect back. We're having a conversation.
We're talking about
I want to ask. No, I'm talking to Markus about this.
Right, hang on. We're talking about premarital sex.
You're not the moderator, dude.
Richie had a point.
No, but we initially said we were going to talk about premarital sex.
We're discussing.
Markus is.
All right. Okay. But
in Markus's hypothetical, what if the relationship was more something like this? Like, let's say Alex had no prospects of making any money staying with the company, but if he leaves the company, he gets $600 a month for the next 18 years.
Yeah.
Do you understand how the power dynamics might flip?
Listen, I think, right, that if a woman is really having a shitty marriage and it's awful for her and it's awful for the guy, it's going to be a lot easier for her to leave. I agree with that. We're agreeing with this. I'm just not agreeing with the premise that it's really easy and really beneficial for a girl to leave, that she's so incentivized that if she's in a happy marriage, she's going to be like, hey, you know what? Being divorced might be more fun. Let's do that. I don't think that's what's going on. That's all I'm saying.
There are literally families, like this is called welfare queens, right? And it's like, you're not supposed to say that, but this is what they do. So the government will literally incentivize women to have sex and have children with multiple different men. And for each man that can't pay for the child support, they get a check each month. Okay. So the more children that she has outside of wedlock and has in her house, so long as there's no man in the house, that's quite literally a stipulation from the welfare, she gets a paycheck for each of those kids. They're basically farming kids for easy.
You know how
money.
difficult it is.
I'm gonna bring this back to the initial topic for a second. I'm gonna bring this back because I want to ask a question. I want to bring this back.
You ever been in the hood?
That's
dude?
fine,
Like,
Alex. We're not allowed to. We're not allowed to discuss this topic. I get it.
You can talk about it, but I don't know why you're so determined to avoid the main topic of conversation.
We're not avoiding anything.
Well,
this is directly in line with marriage. What does marriage mean?
You're not talking about economics. Like, we're talking about premarital sex. My question is this: for Richy and Andrew, what exactly is the downside for a man to have premarital sex?
There's many downsides.
Okay.
So the number one downside. Well, go ahead. You go ahead.
So the first downside for a man to have premarital sex, of course, is STDs. Now you can point and say, but wait a second, some of these things are avoidable. right? Some of these issues are avoidable because, you know, in modernity, we have condoms and prophylactics and things like this. But this was not always the case. And when we look at that, we understand that the societies which promoted away from promiscuous sexual intercourse, especially with men, had much more virtuous societies. Every single time a man is out there having sex with a woman, he's actually devaluing the woman. You know that this is true. Both of you, and I went and checked Markus's work out too, claim that the more sexual partners a woman has, the more devalued that woman is in the marketplace to men. Okay, so if that's true, then that means every time a man is out there banging a chick, he's actually devaluing the chick under your logic, right? So that would be bad for society. Just by itself, that would be bad for society. So you have a duty. You have a duty to greater society.
Let me respond to the first point. So when they actually did studies on this, they looked at STD rates between single men and married men. They found them to be basically the same. And the reason for this is because married people are having sex without condoms, right, with their wife, generally speaking. And if their partner cheats on them, right, then, you know, the chance of them getting STD is much higher, versus typically single men are more likely to wear condoms. So the STD rates is the same for married and single men. So your first point is mute. Now,
It's
the
not
second
true.
point,
Show me the data. Pull it over.
do you want to see the study?
Yeah, especially
I'd like to
considering
see
I
that.
have a counter study from Healthline, where Healthline talks specifically about
Well,
what are
let
called
Alex
pleasure.
Let Alex finish this point. We can pull the studies up.
I want to stay on the phone. I'll pull up the study while Markus can go back and forth on this. Give me like 2 minutes. I'll pull it up.
Yeah, sure. I would say, given your point of devaluing women by having sex with them, right? This is assuming that everyone is being honest, right? So if a guy says, hey, how many sexual partners have you had? And the girl's like, oh, 200. Then I think a lot of guys are going to consider that a red flag and not want to be with this girl. And in that sense, you could argue that she's less attractive or devalued in your words. But the truth of the situation is that if a guy says, how many people have you slept with? And the girl is going to think that the guy is going to judge her for that, then they're simply going to lie about it, right? They're going to say, oh, 3, 4, like whatever a low number they think the guy will like. So
you're basically
what
just
about
devaluing
reputation?
the data. This is the only
Right,
and
but,
this is the
but
only,
what about two things? First, let's talk about reputation, which you do accrue reputation through promiscuity. There's no doubt that that's true. Women always accrue negative reputation through promiscuity. They're known as sluts, skanks, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Not only that,
Logan
though,
Paul's
let's move on to the
fiance.
second point, which is this doesn't actually address whether or not it devalues the woman, the more sexual partners that she has, which you are now making the argument that it does.
No, he's not.
He is. If he says it's a red flag,
let me ask you this: if there's a girl that goes around, hooks up with every guy at the club, by hooks up I mean kiss, but she doesn't have sex with any of them, right? Mm-hmm. She makes out with everyone at college. She has her tits out half the time, but guess what? She doesn't have sex with anyone, right? But then there's one girl that doesn't do any of that, sleeps with 2 guys. Who do you think is viewed more negatively in this situation?
Okay, so I want to make sure I repeat the question back so I don't get it wrong. You're asking if a chick is promiscuous, if she acts in a promiscuous way, do you think that she's going to gain the reputation of being a promiscuous woman? Is that essentially the question?
I'm saying, what would you consider more devaluing for the woman?
I think promiscuity in general is devaluing to a woman, but the more amount of sexual partners that they have, that adds to the promiscuity problem and devalues them further. You seem to agree with this because if you state that a woman has 200 partners creates a red flag for a man, then this means the more partners that she has to reach whatever that threshold is, the less value she has in the day before she had sex with that new man.
Yeah, I'm saying 200 for sure. I'd also consider 0 when a girl's like 25 years old, also a red flag.
Why?
Because if this girl hasn't had sex, then I'd be questioning whether, once again, she's any good at it, whether I'm going to be compatible with it. And if it's not for a religious reason, I'd also
so
be
the red flag is your hedonism? Wait, so the red flag is you're not sure that she could be a great fuck puppet for you? That's your red flag?
I found the study, by the way.
Go ahead, Markus, and finish your point.
Fuck puppet. I like that. I like that term.
Of course,
I'm going to call my girls from now on. All right, we got the study.
Wait, no, I want to finish this though, real quick, and then we'll get to the study.
I know you want to
know, but I want to know this. I want to know why it is, Markus, that you think.
Yeah. So if the girl is zero partners at 25, right, and it's not for a religious reason, then I'd be questioning if she's had any at all relationship experience, right? Well, if she's very inexperienced, then chances are she's not going to be a good partner.
But wait, you just keyed in on something.
Wasn't able to get with anyone by that
Markus,
point.
you just keyed in on something, though. You said if it's not for a religious reason. So how come if it's a woman who is staying chaste for a religious reason, that wouldn't draw a red flag for you? Is
Actually,
it because you would see virtue in her?
It probably still would draw a red flag, just not as big of a red flag.
What would the red flag be? Just that she's not going to be able to satisfy her degenerate sexual needs as well as the whore? That's basically what you're saying.
Yeah,
Oh,
exactly.
gross.
Can we quickly throw out that? Can we quickly throw out the all agree to throw out the STD argument because it's pure horseshit? Single men and married men were found to have the same rates of STD. So that your first point is mute.
Send it to me.
Okay.
Did you want to pull it up?
moot.
I'll post it in a private chat.
A lot of people.
I don't know if he likes to be corrected, but it's moot, not mute.
Oh, you're good, man. Yeah, you can correct me. I don't give a shit. Pretty chill. So the second thing here, I'm gonna post in the chat right now for you. The second thing you were talking about is devaluing the woman. So I guess I have to ask for clarification. Do you mean when you say devaluing the woman? What do you mean exactly? You mean her social reputation? What do you mean?
Well, yeah. So I think that generally speaking, women, as we saw with the poll just here the other night on your channel, if a man would prefer to have a virgin even over a woman who had 5 sexual partners, the poll overwhelmingly stated yes. Why? Now, why is that? And it's a revolting factor. It's the revolt factor. So most men, generally speaking, become revolted, as you admitted on that same panel, by thinking about the fact that the woman that they're with might be having sex with another man or has had sex with other men. It's not a thing that you want to dwell on or think about because it causes what I think is an impurity imbalance. So I think that men generally tend to be attracted to women who have some sort of purity about them, some sort of chastity about them, because these are virtues, and men tend to see virtues in other men just like they do in women. And what are the virtues we're looking for in women? We want loyalty, chastity, and virtue. And those things, I think promiscuity is a good indicator as to whether or not a woman has any of those things, especially the virtue aspect. Promiscuous women tend to suffer from mental illness. They tend to suffer from all sorts of issues, often coming from single mothers, among other huge problems. So, yeah, I think that this is the red flags you're looking at would be virtue based.
Andrew, would you say that you have a successful marriage, happy marriage?
Yeah.
Okay, but you and your wife both had sex. So how do you guys view each other positively if you guys both didn't have your virtue when you got married?
So we both reformed to Christianity, like so many people do.
But that doesn't change your body count.
Yeah. So what? And by the way, pointing at exceptions.
Your wife is attracted to someone who has.
But let me tell you, I'm going to try to tell you this so that you understand that, because this does follow. Assuming that I could have all things equal and could have met my wife and she's the exact same person she is, but had never had sex with a man before me, I would choose that. And so would every motherfucker given the choice.
Okay, but it seems like you're still able to have a successful marriage, even though neither one of you guys had your virtue when you got married.
Doesn't mean it's optimal, Alex. I mean,
well, right, precisely.
About.
Well,
if we're going to talk optimal, there's a big difference between something being optimal and something being a deterrent. Also, you were primarily talking about on the women's side. My initial question was, what about for men? What are the negative downsides of premarital sex?
You asked me the question, bro.
He said
you asked the question.
I'll give you a real one. I'll give you a real one. So this is my life experience, right? So anecdotal, of course, but initially started off in very long-term relationships that split for like military reasons, right? And after that, I sort of got jaded and became agnostic and just became one of you guys, right? And I was just smashing anything that past me, and I'll tell you what it leads to. It leads to zero fulfillment, basically. Like if your life is surrounded by satisfying your own carnal pleasures, you become hollowed out inside it. I don't care if you're religious or not. You eventually become very jaded about how the world works, about how women function. You stop looking at them as people with like a totally different perspective on life, and you start looking at them as objects, right? And I mean, they are. I'm just kidding. But the the reality is like it's unfulfilling, and the only way that I can see to feel like connected to any sense of I don't want to do the theologic thing, but any like soul, right? Like I'm doing the right thing. I have a purpose in life is really like serving other people. And you're not serving other people by constantly just finding the next hot piece of ass to smash. It doesn't, it's detrimental to your well-being long term. Look at
Richie, but
any,
I can tell you there's a lot of married and former married men who are also super bitter towards women. So I'm not gonna disagree with the fact that there are some single men who live unfulfilling lives who are not happy, but that also happens with married men and formerly married men. In fact, I think that guys who have a unhappy marriage are probably going to be the most bitter and resentful.
Right, but this is like the Naxalt argument, right? Like not all X are like that.
Right.
It's like, okay, what are
Point to
the
the
comparisons
outliers
here?
Yeah, well,
right.
let's not focus on the outliers then for a second, right? Because we've been talking about like very promiscuous women. What if we're just talking about, say, Richie, instead of going through that phase where you were just fucking around, you were just trying to get laid, there was zero fulfillment. Let's say you weren't doing that. Let's say you were actually looking for a partner. And let's say you met someone, you've been dating him for a couple of months, it's going really well. This is someone you can see yourself with, and then you have sex, right? My argument there would be, that's not that bad. You find out if you're compatible or not. If it doesn't work out, then it's fine. Like, there's a big difference between someone being like super promiscuous, a girl sleeping with like 200 people, as opposed to a girl actually just looking to find a partner in a 6-month relationship. And then
sure, but we're not arguing about like what's possible. We're arguing about what's preferable
and optimal.
Okay. Let me pose this question: Would you guys both agree that alcohol is okay in moderation?
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, it's not optimal that you guys drink alcohol, right? But it's not a big deal in moderation. But if you guys were drunks who are getting wasted every night, then that would not be the same. That would be a massive, massive negative, both in terms of social repercussions and otherwise.
Well, wait
so
a
why
second, Alex. So are you saying
why is sex any different?
Well, this is actually a wonderful question. So are you saying that's optimal that nobody drink alcohol?
Yeah.
Okay, well then you've just made our argument for us.
Well,
I'd
actually just
made our argument for us.
How did I make your argument for you?
Because we were just getting done telling you we're talking about what's optimal, especially inside of marriage. And so when you're talking about promiscuity, especially on the promiscuous end, you're saying, hey, wait a second, right? If promiscuity done in moderation, that's not a huge problem. But is it optimal that there's no promiscuity? Under your logic, what you just said with alcohol, that would be optimal. You
completely misinterpreted what I said. I was trying to draw attention to the fact that things can be okay in moderation and not have any deterrence, but when overdone are bad. You, Andrew, constantly choose to indulge in alcohol, which is fine, right? But then you're also virtue signaling, saying like, "Oh, premarital sex so bad, you got to be optimal." But you choose to live your life in a very non-optimal way, and I would say alcohol is much worse for you than premarital sex.
Even if I had a house filled to the brim with wall-to-wall prostitutes and one was hanging from the ceiling right now, that would have no bearing on whether or not my arguments were true or not, Alex.
Hold on, I kind of think it would. I kind of think it would. Here's the thing: you don't take diet advice from fat people,
Richy.
right?
Okay, Alex, so just to clarify, when you made the comment about things being good or bad versus like in reference to moderation, right? You weren't referring to sex in itself and that you think in moderation it's good or bad. You were just trying to attack one of Andrew's arguments from his point of view. So you're not conceding that point of view.
Yeah, but I rolled it back.
I think Andrew knew that, but he thought he could get a dunk on me. But yeah,
I did, because under your logic,
my core argument is that premarital sex in moderation is a good thing.
Oh, okay. So then alcohol, so drinking alcohol in moderation is a good thing.
What's in moderation?
It's not an analogy.
Oh, wait, if it's not analogous, hang on. If it's not analogous, then why did you bring it up as an example, Alex?
Because I was talking about extremes.
Yeah.
Well, wait, I thought it's not analogous 5 minutes ago. Now it's analogous. Now it's not analogous. Is it analogous or isn't it?
You want to choose if you want.
No, he needs to answer my question, Marcus. Is it analogous or isn't it?
I can answer any question I want, so I don't need to do anything. But I will.
So you're not going to answer. So answer it.
I'm about to. If you just like don't talk for 10 seconds, I can answer the question. Yeah. Are you done? Can I answer, or you want to
go ahead?
Okay. So the point I was trying to make is about how things that are in moderation not have a social deterrent effect, right? So for you, drinking in moderation does not have a social deterrent effect. However, alcohol has negative physical qualities, which makes it better that you don't drink. Sex in moderation doesn't have a negative social negative effect. In extremes, if your body count, if your body count is like 300, then yes, I will agree that there's a negative social effect. But in moderation, it does not, similar to alcohol. However, sex doesn't have any negative physical issues. Hence, the second part of that doesn't apply. Do you understand?
So I just want to make sure I get this clear. Okay. When you brought up the example of alcohol and you said to me, Andrew, if you drink alcohol to excess, is that a problem? And I said, yes. And Richy said, yes. Okay. And then you said, what about moderation? We said, no. And you said, so the same thing happens with sex. I asked you, okay, well, then is it optimal to have no alcohol? You said, yes. So if it's analogous to that, then my counterexample is also analogous, and you are conceding that it would be optimal then. Do you understand that?
I am absolutely 100% not conceding that. I don't know if you're doing this on purpose or not, and maybe I'm not explaining myself correctly.
I am doing it on purpose. It's good for you.
I was purely talking about social repercussions, social image. With alcohol in any amount is bad for you physically. Sex is not bad for you physically.
Alcohol in any amount is not bad for you physically. That's a lie.
Okay, I completely disagree with you on that. But
the whole point of an analogy is that you're comparing one part of it, not saying that it's the exact same thing.
Yeah, I'm not saying everything's
alcohol, and then instead of talking about the
analogies are a bad
you're talking
argument.
about like the health effects.
Well, you can't bring something up, and then when I give you the counterexample to the thing you considered analogous 2 seconds ago, and then turn it around on you, saying it's no longer analogous. That's absurd.
Okay, so
there's multiple. Oh my God, this is so crazy. There's multiple.
On this point, though, that's why I want a clarification from you, Alex, and then Andrew clarified. I will say that I kind of agree with Andrew on this one from a moderating standpoint. Like, you did bring up an example, he did counter that example right back, and that's the way it.
That's fine, but again, I'm talking about only about social repercussions in that. Maybe I should have specified that. But yeah, I'm talking about social repercussions. The difference between alcohol and sex, once again, is one of them has a physical negative effect and one of them doesn't, which is why it's different for alcohol. Unless you're Andrew, who doesn't think alcohol is bad for you, alcohol does in any amount is not optimal, versus sex is different because there's no negative physical side effects. In fact, it is a good form of cardio, so you can make an argument that's positive. So that is the difference for like the 25th time.
So then are we going to state then that actually using alcohol as a comparative to promiscuity is not analogous, so we can just move on from the point?
In terms of social
analogy works, right? Like
in terms of socially, it is. In terms of the rest,
in terms of socially, it is. So if I'm using it as a social example, then, which is what you're using it as, and we're talking about the social repercussions of what is optimal, and you say zero alcohol is optimal, why wouldn't you apply that to promiscuity, Alex?
Because I've explained to you like 20 million times, because one of them has a physical downside and the other one doesn't.
Alex,
do you not understand? Let me try to explain this very simply.
Okay.
When it comes to certain things,
small words.
There can be, I will do my best. There can be physical and social negative outcomes that follow, right? With alcohol, in moderation, there is not a negative social effect that follows, right? But there's still a negative physical effect. In extreme, there's a negative social and physical effect. With sex, in extremes, there's a negative social effect. In moderation, there's no negative social effect, but sex does not have a negative physical effect. Hence why you cannot make the point that just because I say that no alcohol is optimal, no sex is optimal, because one of them is physically bad for you. One of them is not. Is that not clicking?
Okay, so what your overall argument is, let me make sure I repeat it back to you.
Please
you're
do.
saying that when you're talking about alcohol, if you use alcohol in moderation, right, that there is still some physical downside to it, but there's just not any physical downside to having sex in moderation. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah, there is, but there is though. There's pregnancy, that can be a downside. Even having sex just one time can lead to that. There's STDs.
Oh, we already
stop. I just let you give your entire argument.
STDs, but you're just going to repeat yourself.
Alex, you didn't disprove my point. Even if I conceded to you on the STDs, it wouldn't disprove my point right now. So listen very closely. Listen, yes, I can. Listen very closely to what I'm.
How would you use it,
bro? I just let you talk. Are you going to let me respond or not?
Well, yeah, just don't use things that we already disproved. Go ahead.
Okay, you haven't disproven this. Okay, even if I conceded on the STD front, even if I
So we-
conceded on the STD front, it would not disprove this. So the
So why are you
short
talking
term,
about CP
the
then?
short term ramifications of sex, there are potential physical downsides that only needs to be proven true once. That's it.
So,
And
okay,
if
now
you
that
concede
STDs,
that
then
it's
what else
true
are there?
even once, then you would have to concede on this point, Alex.
Listen, there are
Well,
possible
no,
negative
because
consequences for almost everything we do in life. Right?
That's right. I
Every
agree.
medication you take is going to have a possible negative effect. Doesn't
I
mean you
agree.
shouldn't do it. Doesn't mean it's not good for you.
Then he's a
right?
hypocrite.
I think the argument here is
It's the
what
guy
are
who has
the risks?
premarital sex, and then it's talking about anti-premarital sex. Okay,
What is the risk
You
and
just
reward
said that
of
there's
this?
zero physical ramifications for having sex. That makes
Yeah, that's
absolutely zero
insane.
sense.
Fucking insane.
yeah, if you have a safe sex, yeah, in moderation, there's nothing wrong
Okay,
with
so
that.
now it's a different argument. So the thing is again, when
And-
you're
and
talking
even
about
then-
this, yeah, so
And
this
even
is
then,
nuts.
what? Like we're using birth control or we're using
Okay.
condoms?
Well,
like
yeah,
those aren't
I've been
100%.
saying
So
this for,
even
like, an
one
hour.
time, there's still a
Condoms,
physical.
guys,
like,
condoms. You
Right,
put it
so-
on your dick.
I-
It
Guys,
prevents the jizz from going to the girl. She doesn't
Mark-
get pregnant. You don't get STDs.
partner-
They're very simple.
Do you have
doesn't prevent her pubis rubbing against yours if she has open herpes sores, does it?
okay? Marcus is Alex's partner. Marcus wanted to elaborate on Alex's point. I think that's fair. Go ahead, Marcus, and then Richie, you can rebut.
Yeah, I think when we say there's no negative effects, when Alex was saying that, I think what Alex is trying to say is, in the grand scheme of things, in terms of risk and reward, there really isn't that many negative effects for someone having premarital sex. Now, yes, you can make the argument if someone's like isn't using a condom and fucks a girl and does that repeatedly and gets her pregnant, that might be negative for him, sure. But I think what we're saying is most guys, if they're just responsible, they do this in a safe way, then the risk is so low that I don't see it as a strong negative not to do it. And you mentioned open herpes, right? HSV1 is like 90% prevalent already, and that's amongst kids not having
That's bad.
sex.
That's
right?
not good.
And by the way, you can get HSV without having sex, without
Yeah,
having
most people are born
sex
with
at
it.
all.
Yeah, you
So
can.
to say that the reason not to have sex is because of risk of HSV 1 or 2, again,
Nobody
I
said
don't
that.
think.
We didn't say that. It's straw man.
Well, okay, well, what were you saying then?
So, okay. So first of all, let me correct this because I must be looking at completely different numbers than you, Alex, because what I see is
I said it, sorry.
3.5% STD rate married and a 20% STD rate single. That's what I see.
That in a second, but Richie, you did specifically bring up herpes. Mark,
How many different things?
clarify what you brought up.
No, it's fine. It's what I'm saying is that if you wear a condom, it doesn't prevent you from getting herpes. And you're saying, oh well, like so. Here's the problem that you guys have.
This thing can get you herpes. though, that's my point.
You're operating from this this science framework, right? So it's like every problem that science. Like I'll give you for instance. Do you think that marrying your cousin is a good idea? And I know this is out of left field. I'll bring it right back. I promise. Do you think that marrying your cousin is a good idea?
Depends on if your cousin is hot or not, but generally no.
What?
Is that a serious answer?
No, obviously I'm kidding. No, it's not a good idea to marry your cousin.
How about you, Marcus? Do you think marrying your cousin is a good idea?
Probably not.
Even having sex, right? Probably a bad idea. But even
I mean, the reason you shouldn't marry your cousin and the reason we don't encourage it is because it increases the risk of defects for the kids, right? So
yes, but what if we could negate all of those defects by, say, using science like birth control or condoms? Is it now okay to fuck your cousin?
Are you asking me or Marcus?
Marcus.
Both of you.
I'd have to think about this honestly, right?
You'd have to think about.
You have
whether or
to
not it
think
would be
about
okay.
whether or not it's
would.
okay to fuck your cousin.
If you could create a world, right, where hypothetically there were no risks, there was nothing wrong with fucking your cousin, there were no birth defects, anything like that. If that world existed, then I'm sure we would all change our opinions on that.
What about your
I'm sure
mom?
if it
Could you
was-
fuck
I'm
your
sure-
mom, bro?
I'm
Could
sure
you
if we
fuck your
looked at-
mom?
I'm sure if we looked at animals, right, that fuck their cousins, we don't think it's weird or wrong or anything like that. I think if we did live in a world where there was zero consequences for that whatsoever, the reason we think
What
it's
about your
bad
mom,
is-
Marcus?
The reason
Can you
we
do
think
it?
Cousin.
Wait, listen, hang on.
If you protective
okay.
sex with your mom, Marcus, would that be okay?
Hang on.
If
No,
there's
I
no
would not have-
there's
I
no
would not have
defect.
protective
Hang on,
sex
hang
with
on.
my mom. What I'm saying
People-
is, if we lived in a world where there was no negative effect whatsoever, then our views on sex would change. 100%.
We have that world,
have-
right?
If you
Bro.
look in the Middle East, a lot of people actually set up marriages with their cousins. It's actually very common and legal,
India,
right?
China.
So-
Yeah, and
so
bad.
I
But
would
but
say-
Pakistan.
I would say
Bad
I'm
effects.
against, I would say I'm against that because of the risk of the defects to the kids. But my point is, in a different culture, in a different world, in a different environment, our views on what is right and wrong is going to change depending on that.
Okay,
Now, of
so
course, if you
Markus,
say, would
What
you
are
fuck
your
mum,
views?
we're all going to have this visceral
Well,
response. like,
he
fuck,
already
no
outlined
way.
his view is he's
My
not
point
pro
is
marrying
that
your cousin. But yeah, like loyal.
Yeah, but what about fucking your mom?
French,
what about fucking your mom? Yeah.
You
What
guys are
about
obsessed
that?
with fucking
We're
my
both
mom.
going to say no to that.
Why?
Yeah, exactly.
Why?
Personally,
of the
because I find the
risk.
idea revolting.
Yeah.
Oh,
number one,
because
that,
it
and the risk
because
of the
it's
child.
so if it's revolting, that should be a policy prescription for people. That's the thing you advocate against, is whether or not it's revolting. It's like, should I be able to discriminate against homosexuals because I find it revolting?
You asked, would we?
Andrew,
fuck
why
our mom?
do you think it's wrong to
Because you're
fuck your
very
mom?
interested in it, and we said
I
it's revolting.
want to hear your answer on this.
Because I have biblical grounding from God, which states that it's
You-
emphatically wrong to
you
have
need
sex
God?
with
Wait,
your
do you-
mom.
Do you need God to tell you not to fuck your mom?
Do I
Like, this
need
is-
God? Do I need to have grounding for an argument? Yes, I have to have grounding for an
you cannot
argument.
figure this
You
out
can't
on your
even
own.
say whether or not we should be able to fuck our cousins.
So can you fuck
Well,
your
you
second
said it
cousin?
very clearly.
Okay.
Yeah, wait, you literally need
Richie,
religion
can you
to
fuck-
figure
can
out
you
that you
fuck
should
your second
not
cousin?
fuck your mom.
No, do I need to have grounding for an argument? Yes, I do, Alex. Isn't that insane?
Okay,
But back
would
to
you
Markus,
guys-
I am
called
wondering.
You guys fuck your
You don't need
second
religion
cousin.
to know not to fuck your mom.
You guys are just spurgy. You
Wait,
won't even
so
let us
Andrew,
follow up
so-
on the question. No, let us
Andrew,
follow up
wait,
on
wait,
our
wait,
question.
wait,
Stop,
wait,
shut up,
before-
Alex. We're not done
hold
following
on,
up on our
before-
question.
Before you got
Alex, stop
before
trying to
you-
bulldoze
before-
me. It's not going to work.
before you got-
Alex, it's not going to work.
before
We're
you
not done with our
discovered
inquiry.
religion-
We're not done with our
before you
inquiry,
discovered-
Alex.
Hang on,
Stop trying to bulldoze,
You
Alex.
just
Stop
keep asking
spurging,
questions
Alex.
nonstop. Before you
Stop
discovered
spurging,
religion,
Alex. We're not done with
would
our
you
line of
have fucked
inquiry.
your mom?
You're obfuscating,
Would
Alex.
you have fucked
Ashley,
your
You're
mom?
just
before
obfuscating. You're
you
obfuscating.
discovered religion?
There's
Oh,
only
your
so much
mic's
I can.
Would
cutting
you
out.
have fucked your mom before you discovered religion?
You're obfuscating.
Just answer the
We're-
question. I'll answer the
And I'll
question.
answer it as soon as we're done with our line of inquiry. I promise. So back to
You've
where
been
we're
asking
asking,
questions for 10 minutes now.
and so have you. And I answered all of them.
I'm just asking a follow-up question.
All right, Richie had a question about fucking cousins. I get it. It's very important. Markus started to answer it. In a perfect world where we couldn't get our cousins pregnant and have defected babies, then maybe we would all feel differently. Now, Richie, you said you would bring it back. You promised you would. Bring it back, baby. Let's go.
That's literally what I was bringing you back to. Is
Okay, well, then let's-
is sexual morality. Like, okay, so if your argument is basically, it doesn't really matter. There's no negative ramifications for the man. I would argue that there absolutely are negative ramifications for the women. There are also the men, but less so. If we're making these women less valuable, like there is a good person undertone, like whatever you can think, like, oh, there's live free, all this shit, and it's like, okay, well, how far do you really take that? If you can fuck your cousin and not get her pregnant, can you fuck your cousin? You said, oh, well, maybe in Pakistan it's a good idea. Well, that's a fucking obviously terrible idea, but that's literally what Markus said. In different parts of the world,
that's
fucking
not,
your cousin.
That's not exactly what I said. What I said is all our views might change on what is moral or immoral, what is correct, what is incorrect. If we lived in a completely different world where there was no consequence of fucking your cousin, because that's probably where it came from, is defective children. Because a lot of people were fucking their family in the past,
it actually
right?
came from the Catholic
Egypt.
Church.
So I think I think that is probably the reason, definitely for me, that I would encourage people not to fuck their family, right?
Okay, so that doesn't follow, Markus, and here's
Can
why.
I get a question in?
Here's why that doesn't follow. I just want to finish this up, and then you can ask me whatever you want, Alex.
Okay, go ahead.
So, Markus, if that's true, if all you're worried about is the negative ramifications, then if you had a mom who was completely sterile and was tested to have no STDs, so she could not breed, what would be your justification or problem with her son having sexual intercourse with her, Markus? Because that is the world that you're envisioning right now, where you say that, hey, if these things weren't present, if these issues weren't present, and in that case they're not present, why would that be problematic from your worldview?
I'm not envisioning a world where one parent couldn't, right? I'm not envisioning a world where, okay, right now we live in the exact same place, but hey, guess what, Andrew? Your mom can't have a baby, so go fuck her, right? I'm saying our moral decisions come from this world that we live in. So we lived in a completely different world where we'd fuck people by slapping hands like this, and that you could fuck family without any.
You're not answering my question,
You have like
Markus.
4 years, then maybe we'd think differently.
What's the problem with it from your worldview?
I think you should have a whole standard set, whether one individual can or cannot have sex or not. You have a complete prescription for you don't fuck your family because there's risk of having
We've taken
a
the risk
child.
off the table.
Ashley, can I get a question
one
in?
person, not for everyone else.
Well, why can't we finish our exchange and then you can get the
I just
question in?
answered it for one
This is
Okay,
person.
directly
so
everyone else.
why is it those risks are off the table?
That's
Okay.
okay. So that's why we say, right? Drugs, a lot of drugs are illegal. Yeah. So in Australia, you can't smoke weed. Now in America, you can. If I'm in Australia and I'm like, look, I'm responsible with my weed, right? I can smoke weed. There's no negative ramifications to me. I live a happy life. Weed actually helps me a little bit, right? That doesn't mean that I can do it. And that doesn't mean that I would say that I'm allowed to do it. So
Yeah,
in
that
the
does-
same
that still
sense
doesn't-
that if there's
that-
All right.
This still does not answer the question, Marcus.
Okay.
I just answered your question.
Maybe Alex can clarify.
Yeah,
first.
I have a question that's very related to this. Andrew, before you discovered religion, you would have been open to fucking your mom?
I've always been religious.
Didn't you say that you were kind of you fucked a bunch of girls and then you kind of reconnected with God?
Yeah, but even then, inside the framework of the religion that I had within Protestantism, they said no. That was
Okay,
not
so do you think-
appropriate.
So Andrew, do you think if you didn't have religion, you would have been open to fucking your mom?
Well, I think that there's also a secondary factor here, which is that there is a natural repellent inside of people when it comes to
Which
family
is
sex.
exactly what I said.
But hang on. Even if such a
exactly
thing, but even if such a thing does exist, that has nothing to do with the moral justification, Alex.
You're not sure if it exists. Like you're like maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. Really?
For in some people it does, and in some it doesn't. There's another.
It doesn't
What
exist.
for what percentage
So-
of people do you
Well,
think
I'll
it
explain. I'll explain. There's another phenomenon which was coined. I'm trying to think of what the name is, but it's when mothers and sons have been departed, especially since birth. I think it's called like sudden something attraction. I don't remember what the exact terminology was, but it's like sudden or SFD or something like this, sudden family attraction. And it's for family members who have been displaced for X amount of time. And once they meet up again, there's like insane sexual attraction, which happens. Now, this is rare. It's not something that's a common occurrence, but there are, of course, exceptions within the framework of those rules. So if this is true, and there are exceptions within the biological nature of people to create exceptions from the revolting nature that people generally feel towards family sex, then we still need to have moral justifications for these or why this thing is bad, which is what me and Richy are trying to get to the heart of.
Do you think what percentage of people do you think are repulsed by fucking their idea of fucking their mom? Just
Probably
give me a ballpark.
most. Probably most.
Like 99.9?
I don't know if it's that high, but I would say most, an overwhelming majority.
The vast majority of people, right? So
Mhm.
you just literally proved my earlier point, which is what I was saying. You might have an additional reason not to fuck your mom, which is that your Bible tells you not to do it. But most people are repulsed by the idea, and
Yeah,
that's
but
enough
that's-
motivation.
but
That's enough motivation for them not to fuck their mom.
So you
I
want
mean,
a
but
society
fucking
just
your
based,
cousin.
hang on. You want a society just based around the social ramifications of what people find revolting, Alex?
I think that fucking your mom is generally not a good idea because most people, I think we're hardwired to find it revolting. Yeah. Unless you're
Generally
Okay.
not a good idea.
Okay, so but is it immoral to do?
What moral framework are you operating? Are you asking
Any moral frame? I don't care. Whatever moral framework you want is, if from your perspective, is
Yeah,
it immoral to fuck your mom? Not whether or not you find it revolting.
Yeah, I would say it's immoral as well.
Why?
We're just gonna go down the tree of like why deontology. Okay, why? Because that's the set of beliefs I have, and I know where you're gonna go with this. You're gonna ask me why. Oh, I have a religious framework. You don't have anything. But at the end of the day, this is a pointless argument because we can all agree that most people find the idea of fucking their moms.
It's not pointless in that you can see things that are happening today that 10 years ago would have fucking disgusted people, and now you have the majority of people sort of supporting it, or
Like
at
the
least
trans
more
movement, for instance.
Wait,
That's a
like
good
cutting
example.
those dicks off is now popular. Like that's a
Well, okay,
that's a
hang on.
hipster
First
thing
of
to
all,
do.
it's not popular. People aren't cutting off their dicks because it's popular.
It's a premium talking point for left wing giant politicians like everywhere. I'm just saying, disgusting shit has erupted out of nowhere. And
Richy, what percentage of people do you think want to cut their dicks off?
If we can actually
One-
start back to-
1 in 5 Zoomers are reporting. 1 in 5 Zoomers
No,
are
they are not.
self-reporting.
No, they're
Zoomers
not.
are not reporting that they want to cut
Are
their
we
dicks
No,
trying-
I didn't say that they did. I said that they're reporting that they have become LGBTQ in some way, shape, or form. I didn't say that they were reporting that they're going to cut their dicks off. You inserted that. You inserted something that I didn't say, sir.
Okay, well, it was a natural assumption since Richy was talking about cutting your dick off.
No, Alex asked a direct question. How many people do you think want to cut their dicks off? And you said Zoomers report 1 in 5.
You didn't let me finish what I was saying. I literally said 1 in 5 are reporting that they're LGBTQ, whereas just 10 years ago they were not. This is revolting behavior to most people, right?
Guys, moving on. Are we going to strike the fucking moms and cousins from the table? Is this going back to that?
I'm fine with moving. I'm fine with moving the combo on.
I think Markus is still thinking about the cousin, to be honest.
I don't think he's thinking about. I think the point that Markus. I think it's silly to go through life to look at things very black and white. I think Markus is making a nuanced point, and what he's saying is that, hey, according to my beliefs and upbringing, I find that to be bad. But if I was born in a different time in a different country, I might have a different beliefs. There's a reason why hundreds of years ago, a lot of people were marrying their cousins. Again, did we become were we morally worse back then? No, it was just the fact that was something that was commonly done. Right?
Morals are universalized, though, Alex, across different cultures, including sexual morality, which becomes normal.
Why did hundreds of years ago, when people were more religious, were they way more likely to marry their cousin then?
They didn't understand this. First of all, they weren't. Okay, you're talking about specific nations inside of England, which had to do with crown authority. And so this had something to do with the genealogy going down the family.
It wasn't just that. Common people were marrying their cousins too, way higher than they are.
Sometimes if you had small tribes, things like this, yes, this would happen. And no, we didn't have the science at the time to understand what the ramifications of this were. But
it was very rare.
But even then, people were not going out of their way to marry except external to the tribe. In fact, many tribes would try to intermingle with other tribes because they would see birth defects that would happen in these children. And there was still, by the way, you have to concede this because it was your argument, there was still an internalized revolt factor, which happened between people getting married in incestuous relationships or hooking up in incestuous relationships, unless you think that just a few hundred years ago, our biology changed so much that wasn't present, Alex. But that is part of your constructed argument, so you probably should concede that portion at least.
Okay, so I think the revolt thing is much stronger when it comes to the mom than the cousins. I think people have a much stronger revolt. If you put a gun to a person's head and you say, hey, you either have to fuck your mom or fuck your cousin, I think 99.9% of people will pick the cousin because they're less revolted by that. But it seems that, again, people used to be more religious, that's a fact, and people used to marry their cousins more. So it seems that grounding biblical.
Where did they marry them more?
Pakistan.
No, everywhere, across the world. It was fairly common.
Show me.
You want me to pull up another study?
I want you to pull up something that shows that most of the world was marrying their cousins.
I never said most of the world. I never said most of the world. I said it was more prevalent. Are you disagreeing?
How much more prevalent than now?
Okay. Just tell me. Are you disagreeing with that premise?
Yeah.
So you think that people were marrying their cousins equal to or less than they are now?
I wouldn't be surprised if right now people have more incestuous relationships than they ever have in history, Alex.
Okay.
And that also stands to reason, even if we do it per capita, because there's 8 billion people on planet Earth, it would not actually surprise me if there was more incestuous relationships now than there ever have been on planet Earth ever. Especially since the most recent data that I saw on this was how much incest has become prevalent as a hidden societal backdoor. So people are engaging in this activity without publicly admitting that they're doing it.
Okay, let me pull up another study for you. I don't mind doing that.
This is based on genealogy in Pakistan. It's something like 85% of households are engaging in some sort of incest with their cousins today. And
yes.
the population of Pakistan has exploded thanks to basically the modern world that the West has sort of provided. These new technologies, populations can explode, and if the rates are staying the same, then absolutely there it stands to reason that there's more incest transpiring inter-cousin.
Well, I'm not talking about total. I'm talking about per capita. Yeah, I mean,
even per capita. I still think that you would probably find that incest is more prevalent now than it's ever been.
Because polygamy is less of an issue in these particular areas now, because lower peasants basically have access to more resources. So women are needing to go into these 4, 5, 6, women into one particular marriage. So that means more children from different families, which, yeah, I mean, I don't know, like, the hard numbers on it. I don't know if anybody's ever actually done it. Like,
It would
Okay,
it would
so
be
yeah,
hard
so
to do a
I'm-
historic analysis. That's true.
Okay, so I'm looking at this. Sorry, I didn't have my cousin fucking study pulled up. I didn't really do much research on that topic. But I just found an article from the New York Times. Before the Industrial Revolution in the United States, Canada, and Europe, you might have ended up marrying up to a fourth cousin. People didn't travel far to find a spouse, and the closer you were to
Up
home,
to a
the more
fourth
likely-
cousin.
the more
You know
likely
what a
it was
fourth
you
cousin
marry
is?
within your family. Then in
fourth
the
cousin?
19th century, something changed, and people stopped marrying their cousins.
Yeah. So what? So they might have married their fourth cousin, who they probably have no genealogy with. Right? We're all cousins to each other up to some percentile. Every human being on planet Earth. When you're talking about fourth cousin, I think that's so far removed, it's not even problematic. That's one. And then the second thing is that an article does not support whether or not, and this was your argument, there's more incestuous relationships now on planet Earth as opposed to previously in history. That's what I want you to demonstrate. That's your
Andrew,
argument.
Right, so just before we
Andrew,
look
would
up
you be
another
okay with
study,
marrying a
are you
fourth
okay
cousin?
with are you okay with second cousin fucking?
No.
What
Third
about fourth
cousin?
cousin?
Fourth.
I think if you look at I
Where do
I
you
would
draw
have
the
to look,
line
but I
with
think
your
if you
cousin?
look at fourth, fifth, or sixth, or this type of thing, that it's so removed from whatever your genetics are that it's
All right,
not
well,
actually a
how
physical
far removed
problematic.
does it need to be? So you wouldn't fuck your second cousin? Would you fuck your third cousin?
Scientifically, it's second cousin. But it's our moral framework doesn't come down to scientifically, and apparently neither does yours, because you have
No,
exceptions
I'm
to all
asking
of
you
these
the
things
question.
that
So
are
your
about
moral
your
You
framework-
guys,
feelings.
you guys are cool
Is
with
it
marrying
second
your
or
third
third?
cousin, right?
Yeah, I mean anything to obfuscate from the fact that you can't actually support your previous argument. Alex,
Well,
can
we
you
need to
support it or
literally
not?
on the
just
right
provided
study.
a
Like, are
source
you okay
that
with
said
third
that
cousin?
people after Industrial Revolution, people stopped marrying their cousins nearly as much. I literally
That
just
was not
provided-
your argument, whether or not they were marrying their cousins, but whether there was more incest now or if there was more incest before. That was your argument.
Do you not consider fucking your cousin incest?
Of course, but that has no bearing on your argument.
Andrew, to be fair, I know this because I wrote it down. Alex specifically did refer to marrying.
Yeah, that's nice, but he
Just
also
Andrew
he stated
knows that.
emphatically.
He's gonna do
He
his
stated it emphatically.
research,
Repeated his
misinterpret-
argument back, and he
misinterpret-
said he would pull up a study to prove it. What are you talking about?
Okay, let me explain this very, very simply.
Okay, you
we
explain this.
agree that
Good kind of study.
marrying your cousins is incest, right?
Yeah, I would say so.
So if I just showed you a source that said that people, since the Industrial Revolution in America, people are marrying their cousins less. Therefore, there's less incest in the world now. Do you
No,
not see how
that's
this falls?
no, that's not a therefore. That doesn't follow. That just
How
because
does it not
people
follow?
marry their cousins less now that there's less incest in the world, you dumb bastard.
Okay, explain to me how it doesn't follow. Are you saying that
Because,
people
because
are
you
just
don't need to
fucking
get
their
married to their
Aren't you
cousin in
guys-
order to engage in incest. What are you talking
Aren't-
about, dude?
Aren't you the people that
I
are
can't
like
hear
sort
what
of
you-
arguing against marriage and for premarital sex?
What?
Well, how does that have to do with anything? I'm just engaging in the point that Andrew's bringing up.
Because you could fuck your cousin and still not get married to her.
Yes.
But do you think that's what's happening? Do you think that people
Do you
back
think that's
then
an
used to
accurate
marry-
metric of determining
you-
whether or not people are fucking their cousins? That's whether or not they get married to them?
Well, that's exactly the point I made.
It's
which is
going to
that people,
prove it more.
people
But
marrying
People are
cousins
marrying-
less. People are marrying their cousins less. Therefore, they're fucking cousins less. Do you not think those two follow? Or do you
No,
think
they
people
don't
are fucking
follow.
their cousins,
How do
but
they
don't get
follow?
married?
They
So do
don't
you think
follow.
there's all
White
these-
White
do you think
women in
there's all these
America,
secret cousins
white women in
relationships?
America, dog marriages in America between white women and German shepherds are extremely low. Does that mean that they're fucking dogs less?
Okay, guys,
Well, if every source says, if the sources say that since the Industrial Revolution, people stopped marrying their cousins nearly as much, then yes, there's less incest.
By the way,
Unless
Richy,
you provide
no,
the
man,
argument-
no,
unless-
listen.
unless you can
That
make the
literally
argument
doesn't
that most
follow.
of- Unless you can make the argument that most incest is like mom and son or something
Bro,
like
that
that.
doesn't follow. You can't make that. You can't say the correlate that because
Then
people marry their cousins less, there's
True,
less
Rick.
incest. It doesn't make sense.
Andrew and Richy provide a study that supports your argument. All I'm saying is he did provide a study that would support his would-be argument, right? So if you're saying that it doesn't, then provide something that would be a better resource for everyone to determine whether people are cousin fucking.
Yeah, or
Okay.
just show one ounce of proof. One ounce of proof that incest is more common now than it was 100 years ago.
Okay, so I can give you this. I'll give you the same exact thing you gave me, which is an article from the Atlantic, which is called "America Has an Incest Problem."
Wait, can you share the screen?
Well, I'm not going to share the screen. I'm just going to DM the article over to you. But right now, I'm actually having the stats pulled up so that we can get this settled.
Okay,
It's
let's
very
get this out.
difficult.
Very important
Yeah.
issue.
Well, the thing is that I'm fine with moving on from it. I just need you to acknowledge, though, that saying that, hey, because people are marrying family members less, that means they're having sex with their family members less, doesn't actually follow.
I think it follows pretty closely. I think that, yes, if people are marrying their cousins less, what happens in marriage? Sex. So if there's less marriage, there's probably less sex.
Yeah,
Unless
you guys are
unless-
advocating that you're going to have more
Unless-
sex when there's no
unless-
marriage.
What's your body count,
unless
Alex?
you're going to try, unless you're completely irrelevant.
Alex,
Unless
are you
you're gonna-
married?
No, I'm not married. Unless you're
What's
going
your
to, unless
body
you're going to be.
Fucking
Hang
Are
insane.
you over 100 right now?
Hang on. I'll happily answer that question once we get through this. My body count is irrelevant to this point of discussion. Unless, Andrew, you're going to make
Fine.
the argument. Unless you're going to make the argument that even though there's less marriage between family members, there's still a lot of hookups between family members. Is that your argument?
I think that, especially now that you have blended families and single motherhood, yeah, probably. I think that the incest rates now are probably more prevalent than they ever have been throughout history. It wouldn't surprise me a bit if that was
Okay.
true. Pakistan was also given as an example for this, by the way, where you're talking about such an overwhelming amount of the population. We did give you data on this. Okay, so that's one. And then the second thing,
I haven't seen any data on it from you.
not only did I just texted you this, but we brought up Pakistan. That is a data point, bro.
I'm looking at the whole world, not just Pakistan.
Yeah, but if an entire nation is almost
This study is okay. Let me take a look at this article. Are you saying that what you showed me is saying that there's more incest in Pakistan now?
Post it in the private chat. I don't give a shit. I'm just saying, like,
Yeah, if you'd show them in private chat, then I can
Somebody
look
else
at it as
share.
well. It'd be great.
yeah.
Which part of the article that you send me, so you can save me time, where do they talk about how there's more incest nowadays?
Alex, I gave you the same exact argument back, just using an article. I'm not claiming that there's a followance that just because America has an incest problem, that means it's more or less prevalent. But your argument is that that it's more prevalent or less prevalent now because people marry their cousins less, that incest therefore must be on the decline. Not only does that not logically follow, but the logical structure of the argument doesn't even make
So
sense.
provide me a source that there's more incest now.
That's all I
throw
was
in a
saying,
private
Andrew. Andrew, I
What you send me doesn't prove that. It talks about.
Andrew, for the
He made a logical argument, dude. Like,
What-
I
Give me a
just
source.
demonstrated this logically.
No,
It's
you
been
haven't
demonstrated.
demonstrated anything. You haven't provided the article you sent me has nothing to do with increasing incest rates. Can you provide me one data point that shows that incest is more common?
Alex, it's your argument.
Oh my god! Here we go. Here we go.
Why,
with the,
why were you talking about incest in the first place? What was Richie's point?
my whole point was that you guys don't have an actual moral framework for any of this. This is basically
that's like a tired argument.
your entire justification for everything.
We don't even have to get into
proposing.
that. I'm fine with just staying with whatever the realm that they're on. They don't want to get into like pre-sup and things like that, Richie. I'm fine with not doing that. So back to this though, if you're talking about the prevalence of incest, right? It's literally been estimated to be as high as 20%. 20%, bro.
Well, what was it before?
Well, the thing is we don't have good and adequate research to determine what it used to be. But your argument was that, hang on, your argument was, hey, because there's less marriage, that I'm going to make the bold claim that means there's less incest. That doesn't follow.
Okay, all right. So, guys, I took it as Alex actually had some kind of data to provide provide for his opinion, right? But moving on back to topic, do we want to stay on the incest thing?
Yeah, I'm fine moving on.
Let's move on and let's get it back to topic, back to men and women, back to what the whole debate's about.
Can we do the other proposition?
Hold on, guys. Let's wash this one out. I'm not going to count this as a W or an L for either side. We're going to wash.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah. I was kind of curious because the other proposition was what was it? No fault divorce.
Yeah.
Can we move into that?
Yeah, sure. Is everyone good to move on from this topic?
Yeah.
Yeah, if I could take a piss real quick, I can still hear
we
you.
got kind of bogged down
Dude,
in it.
But to be fair, this is good content. Nobody's been ever been called out for cousin fucking on YouTube. That's a good one.
Yeah, it's all in good fun,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, back to no fault divorce. My position on it is that should get rid of it as quickly as possible. That it's detrimental to society. It's been detrimental to society. It's going to remain detrimental to society. That you should have justifications for divorcing. After all, you did give your word and you did make an oath, and men ought stand by their oaths.
Do you
And
think
so
that should
should
apply
women.
to religious people or secular people as well?
I think that secularists would largely agree that they should stick by their oaths. Yes.
No, I've asked you a direct question. Do you think that no fault divorce should not apply, should be removed for secular people as well, or just for religious people?
Yeah, I think it would be a step in the right direction for secularists as well, though it's not my primary concern. My primary concern is with the religious. I still think that from a secular standpoint, it still makes a lot of sense.
Didn't you say in the previous debate that you believe marriage should be mainly adjudicated by the church? Like the church should have supremacy when it comes to that, and the government should not have a role?
Yeah.
So who's going to enforce no fault divorce? Is going to be, because it's a legal law. It's not a church doctrine, right? It's not the church that's causing no fault divorce. It's a law. So how can the church be in charge of marriage, but at the same time you want to change the law?
Well, you have to separate the two entities. So if we're talking about, at this point, secular marriage, we would say that this is a state enforcement mechanism. Whereas if you're talking about, hang on, let me finish the answer. I just let you ask the question. Let me just finish the answer. So if you're talking about secular marriage, okay, then yeah, that would be state enforcement. If we were talking about religious marriage, I'd want to see that be a church enforcement. I don't see any problem with that at all. And I think the state should recognize the religious marriage and the autonomy given to the church rather than the state having autonomy over that marriage. I don't see why that needs to be.
Andrew, if you get divorced, who's going to enforce the alimony? Is it going to be the church or is it going to be the state?
Well, if it's a church doctrine, there may not be any such thing as alimony, which is allowed if the state recognizes the church's authority over religious marriage.
Who's going to allow you to divorce? Is it going to be the church or the state? Who's going to actually put you in jail for breaking the law?
Well, it depends. I just told you need to separate the entities. So you're asking me in which instance, for religious marriage or for secular marriage?
Well, in both of those situations, the state would come in and enforce the laws of divorce. Just because you're religious, you don't get a different exemption under the law.
Why couldn't you? Why can't you?
Well, I'm not talking about why couldn't you. I'm just saying that's the way it is right now.
Yeah, but I'm not talking about is. I'm talking about ought now. So you're asking me ought questions. And when I'm actually telling you what ought be is that the state recognizes religious marriage as a separate entity where the church can enforce those marriages. When you're talking about secular marriage, the same way they enforce it now, they're the ones who allow you to get a divorce, even if the state says you have a divorce from us. The church may not necessarily give you a divorce, and they will literally remove you from the community if you do such a thing. So there are stiff penalties.
But let's say you're you have a kid with your wife, and you become a total dick, deadbeat dad, and you run away. What can the church do to force you to pay for the child's upkeeping?
So the way that the church would generally enforce this is through excommunication and through kind of your spiritual father talking to both parties. So in this case, you're assuming that the marriage is between a woman and a man who both share the same religion and have turned their marriage over, the enforcement arm, to the actual church itself. So the church has tons and tons of authority because they can literally say you're no longer a part of this church if you don't adhere to our creed. Now, I suppose that they could become secularists and then turn their autonomy over to the state, and that would be fine. They could do that. But yeah, there's definitely an enforcement arm there via the excommunication, which is within the purview of the church.
They would effectively have to commit to spiritual wickedness to go totally. But
a lot of people do that, right?
Yeah. Unfortunately,
they do.
Yeah. I mean, okay, so I'm not even necessarily disagreeing that much with your argument that for religious people, the church. What about at least when it comes to alimony? What about child support? Should the church be in charge of that too, or should that be?
I think that the church has often adjudicated such things using church counselors and using church priests, where they will literally have party agreements between both parties who are members of the church, and say, listen, here's your duties and responsibilities as a Christian to your wife after we've granted you the divorce, and we expect these to be upheld, or else there's going to be a penalty, and the penalty would be removal from that community.
This
And
is
so
like
people will kind of go
The- the-
over
the
and out of their
issue
way.
is
this is like
there's-
basic. This is like basic shit, though. Like, can we maybe like veer away from the theocratic discussion here? 'Cause
Well,
I
he
don't
wants
think we're gonna
to. He
get
wants to
anywhere
do
with
the
it.
inquiry. He wants to do the inquiry. That's fine.
Started.
You
No,
can
here's
find.
here's
That's
here's
fine.
here's
We're
here's
not
the
gonna
issue.
come
Let's see
to an
what-
agreement on any of this.
Well, that's not the point of a debate, is to come to agreements, to have a discussion. Anyway, here's the issue I see is the enforcement power of the church is significantly less than the state. So, for example, the state has the threat of violence behind it. So, if
In
you're a
this
deadbeat dad, you don't pay for your kid. Ultimately, not right away, but ultimately, they can come and put you in jail. Right? That's the threat of violence. The church doesn't have that. So, if
They
someone
don't
just
have to
decides,
have that.
but if someone just decides, fuck it, I'd rather save $1,000 a month on fucking bills and shit than paying for my kid because I'm an asshole, and I'll just join a different church. Like, there doesn't seem to be a very strong enforcement
Then they
mechanism.
will. Well, wait a second. That would be the perfect enforcement mechanism, right? Because once they have declared that they are now secularists, they are up for secular authority, aren't they?
But who's going to determine whether they're religious or secular enough? Like, how's that going to be
The
determined? Is it gonna
church.
be like-
The
you're
church will. The people who've always determined it. The church. They're going to
they're-
determine if you're religious or not because they're the church.
so you're saying that if someone doesn't follow the church rules, they're declared secular, and then the state comes in.
Well, they're excommunicated from the church, and yeah, then you would appeal to the state authority.
But then the state still has the ultimate
This is how
power.
this works right now, by the way, in many nations which are under papal law, essentially. So they do actually allow, in some of these nations, and traditionally have, the state to decree who is part of the church, or I'm sorry, the church to declare who's part of the church and who isn't, and that marriage is within their dominion. If they excommunicate the person or the person walks away, then yeah, they become secularists and wards of the state at that point. The state enforcement is what's going to come in and then enforce whatever the marriage decree is.
But the ultimate backing, the ultimate enforcement mechanism is the state, right? Because the church, if someone's not following the church rules, the only thing the church can do is declare them to be non-religious, at which point the state can come in. But still the state that has the ultimate power in this situation.
So even if that was true, which it's not, but even if it was, so what?
Well, then that doesn't follow, because if the state has, if we're talking about oughts, then yeah, I guess it's just like your philosophy. I can't disprove that wrong. Like, that ought to happen. You're talking about getting rid of no fault divorce, which is something that's done through the state. And then your idea of enforcement is that, hey, the church is going to take over, but then they're going to, if someone doesn't follow, the state is going to take back it. I mean, yeah, that's a fine argument. I don't have like a strong disagreement with that. I don't see any issue.
So now that I've allowed you to have the inquiry and you're satisfied with the inquiry, can we have our inquiry back now, Alex?
I appreciate you allowing me, Andrew, to ask questions. That was very kind of you. Yes, you may now ask me questions as well.
Yay. Well, actually, I had some directed towards Markus, as there's been a lot of bogarting on the debate. Markus, your position on no-fault divorce, is it good or bad?
Yeah, I wouldn't say whether it's good or bad. I don't have too strong an opinion on it. I think if people want to get divorced for any reason, they should be able to.
Oh, for any reason.
Yeah, exactly.
So what about the fact that
if a guy wakes up one day and he thinks, you know what, I think I'm happy as single, I don't want to be with this girl anymore, I think he can get a divorce.
So if a woman wakes up and says, well, we have 4 children together, but I would prefer to go fuck my boss and go be a skank, you think that there should be no penalties for her. There's no fault for her whatsoever to break up her entire family in order to go do that. That you don't need any additional justifications for why she should be allowed to break up her entire family.
Well, if the family's broken up, then obviously the same way it's set up now, that if child support needs to be paid, it's going to be paid. So yeah, that's going to be a consequence. Also, I think there's personal consequences for them, but I wouldn't enforce a consequence as in the wife says, okay, I want a divorce. I would not give her any consequences just because she wanted a divorce. No.
So do you agree or disagree that the outcomes for children in intact family homes are far superior to the outcomes of children in non-intact family homes? Would you agree that that's true?
Yeah, for the most part, yeah, I would.
Yeah, so if that's true, then there is more than just a consequence of the individual's happiness. There's an outcome on all of society. If you have no show cause and you just decide that you're going to break up your intact family due to your own hedonistic preference, this would actually be bad even under your worldview, wouldn't it?
Yeah, but there's a lot of nuance here. I don't think there's a lot of marriages where the woman's just like, hey, you know what? I just think I want to fuck my boss. Like everything else in this marriage is completely fine. I love my husband. I love my kids. But you know what? I just want to fuck my boss. So I'm going to like break up this marriage. I don't think that typically is what happens. I think there's a lot of issues, as you spoke to before, right? The reason people get divorced is very complicated. There's a lot of issues going on in the relationship, which sex is one of them that we mentioned earlier. There's a lot of issues. I don't think it's just I just want to, and that's just it, and I just want to fuck my boss. There's many, and so I would argue that I would prefer there to be especially if there's a lot of issues in that relationship. I think the kids sometimes are going to be happier or have better outcomes if the parents are divorced, as opposed to if they stay in an unhappy parental marriage.
So this is kind of what I was waiting for you to get into, as all the degens say the exact same thing. They claim that they think that some of the outcomes for some of the people might be better, but you just conceded moments before this that children from intact family homes have better outcomes than children without intact family homes. How can you reconcile those two things, Marcus?
For the most part.
For the most part. So we're talking about optimal again, right? So pointing to the outlier and saying there are some cases where divorce might be optimal. It's not optimal for the most part, is it? If the intact family home is producing the best outcome for the children.
Yeah, so I would put a greater importance on the ability for the parents to be able to choose not to be with each other in situations they don't want to be in. So I wouldn't force a wife to stay with their husband if they don't want to be there.
Why?
Even if it means in a greater percentage of the time that children have worse or better outcomes. I think that the marriage, if I would never force a woman to stay with a man.
Well,
Andrew,
okay, so hang on. First of all, it's not forcing. Hang on. It's not forcing the woman to stay with the man. The woman and man both took an oath inside of their marriage, for better, for worse, through richer and poorer, till death do us part, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They took oaths to each other. When you're talking about no fault, all we're saying with no fault is that you should have to show actual cause for the divorce other than irreconcilable differences, which is the number one thing cited, meaning infidelity.
But it's just the number one thing.
Hang on. Let me finish.
Right?
Marcus. Infidelity, things like this, that would break up the marriage. From your perspective, though, it's okay. If right now, if you're looking at society and why society is so messed up, it's due to a single motherhood epidemic, which is on the rise. And this is why you see so many people having such bad outcomes in life. Homelessness rates are tied to single motherhood. Poverty is tied to single motherhood. Almost every single instance of negative outcomes that you can find currently in society
drug abuse,
is
child
tied
abuse.
back to single motherhood. You don't give a shit about any of those outcomes,
So
just the
why do you
hedonistic
think-
relationship.
Here comes the virtue signaling.
Alex had a follow-up to Marcus's, and then we'll move to you, Richy.
Alex just had his inquiry. Can me and Marcus finish our exchange?
Hang on. It's directly related. Andrew, could you provide proof that children of couples who hate each other are happier than the children of divorced couples?
What would that matter about the outcomes?
Well, because if it turns out that children, when the parents hate each other, have worse outcomes than the children of couples who get divorced, then that'll completely destroy your whole
There
point.
is some good evidence to this, and I'll give you a good example of this. If you look at children who are remanded to state custody, okay, they are 1,000 times. Some cases I've seen is between 100 and 1,000. Some it's only as high as 50, but it's a significant amount more that they will actually be abused. Even if they come from an abusive home, the abuse will actually be worse.
What does that have to do with anything?
Because what it's demonstrating is that if you're looking at the outcomes base here, even then, if you have an intact family in an abusive home, it still seems to be optimal than when you remove even the abusive parents. So that does seem to lend some sort of evidence to the fact that even if the parents don't get along, or even if you're in an abusive household with intact parents, that it might be optimal to the alternative.
You're making a massive logical leap here. I'm talking specifically about unmarried couples who got divorced, right, versus couples who hate each other and stay together. I don't even have a strong position on this. I'm just wondering whether your premise is even true. Can you provide any proof that the couples who stay together and hate each other, the kids have better outcomes than the couples who get divorced?
There's literally no way to find that out, because hate is a subjective terminology, right? It's like
who report.
How could you? What would be the data?
Who cares? Let's just
process
concede it. Hang on. Let's just concede it, right? What does that have to do with my argument that the outcomes for children who are from intact homes are far better and far and away better than the outcomes of children who are the product of single mothers? What would you, even if I gave you that argument, can you explain to me or express to me in some way how it negates mine?
No, I agree with that. Children, on average, children from intact homes will have better outcomes than children from single mothers.
Then what are we arguing?
I think no one's going to disagree with that. Well, because we're talking about no-fault divorce, right? So we're talking about the idea of whether a couple getting divorced is negatively going to impact the children. So what we have to do is look at couples who want to get divorced and don't, and the outcomes of those children versus the couples who actually do get divorced.
Why?
Because if it turns out that the couples who stay together and don't like each other have worse outcomes, then no-fault divorce would probably be a good thing.
Okay, so the epidemic of single motherhood, which has spawned almost in line with no-fault divorce, are you saying, so you're saying it on both sides of your mouth? On the one hand, you say, yes, if there's an intact family unit, that's optimal for the children by all of your data that you're looking at. But your counter argument to this is that there could be some cases where the parents are, in a relationship where they hate each other's guts, and that could disproportionately affect the outcome of the children. Well, your answer's already there, which is, if that's true, then we should still see that the intact homes, you're going to have X amount of parents who don't like each other or hate each other or stay together for the kids. The outcomes there still seem to be optimal in comparison to the single motherhoods by the stats.
But why does it have to be single mothers? Like you're
what else are you going to be if you're divorced?
Well, you can have a mother and father who both take care of the kid. They do it separately, where the kid.
That's not an intact family home.
Right. So that's what I'm looking at. So if we're looking at single mothers, sure, I will grant you that those will have worse outcomes. But
they're still considered single mothers if the father lives in a separate house and is contributing.
Where both of the parents are there for the kid, they're just not married anymore. That's what I'm asking.
They're still
what
called
does that
single
have
mothers,
bro? It's literally, and hang on. 2012, 89% of kids in the psych ward do not have intact families. They come from fatherless home. 90% of homeless kids have single mom. 85% of behavioral disorders, single mom. 70% of kids in juvenile hall, single mom.
I'm agreeing with you that single mom, oh my God. But the point kids with single moms will have worse outcomes. Single
moms, right?
Then it would follow, Alex. Then it would follow, and Marcus too. Then it would follow that even if they were intact homes where the parents stayed together, even though they hated each other's guts, the outcomes for the kids would still be better because the outcomes for kids are still better from intact homes. Period. So it follows.
Do you think like the only two options are either you're a single only the mother's raising the kid and you're intact? Like, do you not think there could be a lot of situations where the mother and father both take care of the kid separately?
I know it's all Chinese guy.
It has nothing to do with anything. I know it's all Chinese guy. Yeah, so this is all outliers.
So then we could. Well, no, I don't think it's outliers. I think most of the time.
That's what you're arguing.
Yes.
No. Do you think most of the time?
Argument from outlier.
Do you think most of the time when people get divorced, only the mother's there for the kid and the father just like fucks
most
off?
Of the time in divorces, women get full custody of the children, and including primary custody. Only just now, in the last 10 years, has joint custody and joint physical custody even become even slightly egalitarian. But yes, for the most part, the women always get the kids, Alex.
Okay, I would need to look that up. I don't have a
you have to be. How do you not know that? That's you have to be a
that's
real
common
fuck up
knowledge.
as a woman to not get full
what
custody.
Alex is saying.
No, I think what happens more often than not is
gets primary custody.
Yeah,
what Alex is saying is how many of those are the father involved, right? How many of those is
I understand the distinction, but you don't understand that would still be considered a single mom household versus an intact family.
So it's irrelevant.
How are you not grasping this?
So if the father has partial custody, that would still be considered a single mother home?
Yes.
Yes.
Of course. Why wouldn't it be?
If the father has joint custody, that would still be considered.
She's fucking single.
Home, dude.
Oh, she's single. She's a single mother. Whether the father has some access to his children, the mommy's still single.
Okay. What if the kid spends 1 week with mom and 1 week with dad? Would that still be a single mother home?
Yes.
Holy shit.
So if we took all these single mothers, right?
Wait, no. I need you to concede that yes, that would be a single mother home. That's still a single mom in a home who's single.
All right, Marcus.
I've never defined single mother as I've defined single mother.
Apparently,
always.
you've never been a statistician that works in sociology.
Relax, Richard. Relax. I think most people view single mother as when the mom is the only one raising the kid, and dad isn't there for the kid. I don't view a situation. Hang on, relax. I don't view a situation where both the mom and dad are there for the kid. The kid is spending some time with mom, some time with dad, as a single mother home. And I think most people don't view that as a single mother
What would an intact family home be
Sure, hold
to
on,
you?
Marcus.
What would that, hang on, what would that mean to
That's
both
right,
of you
I
guys?
can
What does intact home mean?
Okay.
Well, let the moderator speak.
Right, I was saying it was Marcus had a point to elaborate on that, but if
Oh, no, I was going to ask you a different question if they want to finish this.
All
Yeah,
right.
what does intact single home mean to you guys? What does that mean? Intact family home. Intact. What does that mean?
Where the mother and father are living together with the kid.
So if mommy and daddy are not living together with the kids and they're living separate, even though both of them may have input on the kids' lives, would that be a single mom or an intact family home, Alex?
There's more than two options, my man.
But to give me the third.
The third option is the kids spend some time with mom, some time with dad.
Yes,
They have
but would that
custody.
still qualify as a single mother or an intact family home, Alex?
Yeah, there's more than two options.
Yes, so
Oh.
the third, and so I just asked you on the third option, which would that fall under as a category, do you think?
Andrew, are you a homosexual or are you a alcoholic? Pick one of those two.
I'm neither of those things. It's a presuppositional, preloaded question.
Okay, so there we go. So yes,
Yeah, so
it's
I
neither-
asked you what the third
No.
category was.
I just
Right,
explained to you like 3 times. The parents have joint
no,
custody.
what he's saying
The
is that there is no way to distinguish between how many days the father gets, what the quality of the father is. There is no way to statistically analyze on a mass scale what are the outcomes for 4 children with the husband who makes this amount of money versus like you could just infinitely regress into like all of these little different distinctions to where it's an impossibility to gather the data, which is the
What's an
reason that they
important
gathered the
distinction?
data between 2 separate entities, which is single or together.
Yes,
That's it.
it's intact or it's not intact. It can't be.
No.
It can't be both.
no one. Okay, I understand. No one is disagreeing with you that single mothers' homes are going to have worse outcomes than intact families. What I'm talking about is a third category, and I'm posing a question: does that third category, where the parents have joint custody of the kid, the kid spends time with mom and dad,
That
have
is not an
worse
intact
outcomes?
home. No. Yes, they do. That's considered under the sociological standard to be a non-intact home. So an intact home is going to be mom and dad in the same home with the kids. That's an intact family home. Everything outside of that is not an intact family
Okay, so
home.
the two options, just so I understand this, are single mother homes and intact family homes. There's no third option, right?
That's how you're going to be categorizing this. You could make subcategories under this for the purpose of extrapolating additional data. So you could say, what about homes with a stepfather? Or what about homes without a stepfather? And they do that, and you can extrapolate data off of that as well. But for the purpose of this conversation, it's either an intact home or a non-intact home. And in the intact homes, the kids do way better than in the non-intact homes.
Yeah, but
Pretty
we could
simple.
assume that the intact homes are having better outcomes probably because the parents don't fucking hate each other, right? The single
no.
moms, what we really need to look
can't
at
assume
is
that.
if we take all the
No.
single moms, let me finish for a second. If we
Go
take
ahead.
all the single moms that are divorced, hate their fucking partner, are miserable and have divorced, and then force them to be staying together, how do the kids cope then? What do they look like?
They
Because
still
right now we have
Yeah.
intact family homes
we
that we
already
can
answered
assume are
this.
going to be more happy together. And then we have people that are divorced probably because there's a lot of shit going on, right? But what we really need to look at is if you take all these single moms with all this shit going on that hate their partner, force them to be together, their kids still going to be as happy.
Okay, but we've already
That-
answered this. It's actually loaded in to the data itself. So if you were to see that most of these married couples dislike each other or hate each other or things like this, even pre-default or no-fault divorce, where most marriages stayed intact, okay, most of them did pre-no-fault divorce. So knowing that this is true, if you look at the intact family homes, even if those parents, and there must have been plenty of them who hated each other, the outcomes for the children were still better.
But you don't know, it's a correlation. It's not a causation thing. It could be multiple things that are causing kids to be worse off nowadays than they were 30 years ago.
Yeah, just all of them go back to the single mom. I just read the stats. It's more than a correlatory when all of the stats, again, 89% psych ward, do not have intact families. In fatherless homes, 90% of the homeless children are from a fatherless home. 85% of kids with behavioral disorders, fatherless home. 70% of the kids in
You're arguing against the
fatherless home.
Children,
you're arguing against
what do you want, dude?
Children in single-family households are 40 times more likely to be molested.
Are you just going to keep repeating yourself how bad single mother homes are?
40
Richie,
times.
Okay, here we go. Let's do a little more virtue signal. Go ahead.
It's not a virtue signal. This is literally happening in reality. Okay, so if
Yes,
you're not
we all
married
understand
and you're a
that
single mother,
homes are
your
worse
children are 40 times more likely to be molested or abused by somebody outside of the home. 40 times. That's a magnitude of 40. Do you understand what that means?
That was a fantastic argument to a point that no one made.
Is it a good or a bad thing? Obviously a bad thing. This is directly related to no-fault divorce. If it's on a whim from some female, we're getting 40 times.
Do you have a counter argument or not?
I feel like I'm just debating ChatGPT. You guys just keep repeating yourself over and over again.
Wow, great.
We've acknowledged.
Well, your nose is fucked up. So great. Like, do you want to make an argument? Like,
listen to the mod for just a second. Richie, bring that back to the actual subject. I know what you're saying, and maybe a lot of people do.
Can I repeat Alex's argument? Can I repeat Alex's argument so we know we're on the same page?
Let Richie cook for a second and then sure.
Go ahead, Richie. Let it out.
What I'm saying is that you're sort of hand waving this away, and it's like, oh well, there could be these exceptions. There could be these.
No,
exceptions.
we've agreed to.
This is how this is statistically broken down because there are either intact homes or non-intact homes. You're like, well, dad could be a rapist. Sure, it's happened. 40 times more likely for the children, minors, to be sexually or physically abused. 40 times more likely in single mother households. And this includes all of the data with the dad that has, half custody, because guess what? And then this will logically follow. You don't even have to look at the data, right? If I'm a pedophile and I want to find kids that are easy access to, right? Where do I go?
I have no idea.
I go to a single mom.
You would go. I
go to a single mom with I go to a single mom that has a full-time job.
Yeah, you'd go where the kids were. So that's why it logically follows same way that you see hyper predators. Yeah, well, it's the same reason that hyper predators, you find them in schools and you find them in churches and you find them in places where there's easy access to kids.
You're still not engaging with me.
Let me repeat your argument and you tell me if I got it right.
I just want you to engage with what Markus is saying.
I want to engage with both of you are saying, but let me make sure that I get it right by repeating it first so you know I'm not straw manning you. Your argument is that inside of intact family homes, can we demonstrate that the children from homes of married couples who argue and fight and have a bad relationship are still superior to homes of people who are divorced? Am I incorrect in this?
No, you are correct. You actually said
okay. So then we have answered this 13 times and told you that the data itself for intact family homes, if we go back pre no fault divorce, if we go back pre no fault divorce, where divorce was not a thing for the most part, you would expect the outcomes for those children, because many of the parents must have hated each other, to have been worse, but they're not.
Right. But at the end of the day, we just don't know whether dude, antidepressants
give me a
are on the rise.
argument.
Drug use is on the rise.
Exactly.
We don't know. You're making a correlative argument, which is fine, but we don't know if it's because of no fault divorce that kids are having worse outcomes. That's the thing. So in order to prove that, we would need to isolate for the factors and look at kind of the way Markus said. We would have to look at it.
Let's find out if that holds water. Let's find out. Why do you think it is that people were not getting divorced at the same rate they are now pre no fault divorce? Alex, what would you say the reason for that is if you had to guess?
I think there's multiple reasons. I think that
give me one.
Well, let me give you multiple. There was the religion. I think social pressure was another one. And yeah, I think the law played a role. Sure. So I think it was
no fault divorce at least played. Do you think the no fault divorce played a significant role in the uptick in divorces, considering that after no fault divorce became a thing, divorce rates skyrocketed? Would you say that's a very strong correlatory, Alex?
In what period? What's the period that we're looking at?
Let's say the 0.8 correlatory.
Yeah, I'm just saying. Let's just say
like a 20 year. Were we talking about like a year after no fault divorce?
Yeah,
there
I mean,
there was
yes.
a massive increase, or we're talking about like in 20 years?
Over even the course of, let's just give it like the widest berth we can and say over a 50-year time span. Wouldn't you say that that's a strong correlate? If you see the massive increase in divorce go right alongside with this law being passed, and people, their number one answer for why they're getting divorced is irreconcilable differences, meaning they don't have to show cause anymore. You don't think that that's a strong correlate, really?
I think it's a correlate, yeah.
Is it a strong correlate?
I think whether it's strong or not depends on the time span and on the increase. If we're talking like 400%, then yeah, it's a strong correlate. If it's like 20% over the span of 50 years, then it's not a strong correlate. So
it's hundreds of percent higher, hundreds of percent. Now, if you go back before no fault, now hang on, let me ask you this. If you go back before no fault divorce and you take a look at all of these intact marriages, wouldn't it stand to reason that if there was this kind of rampant abuse, which you guys are claiming happens within marriages, which is bad for kids, which is why we need no fault, why is it that you didn't see the worst outcomes for the kids when people were basically staying married within the confines of their vow? Can you explain that to me?
Yeah, sure. There could be multiple reasons. It could be the fact that, okay, well, I'm just about to. It could be the fact that we didn't really, focus on children as much, like in terms of the government investigating. There was less ways to report abuses, that we didn't track this data as closely. It could be that, for example, technology has fucked kids up. There's other things that are causing kids to get fucked up, other than the fact that their parents got divorced. It could be multiple breaks.
Okay.
So that's why the time span matters.
So let's take these one at a time. Let's start with the first one. The first one is that the government has not been researching it enough, and that's the problem. Okay, that makes no sense because we have the outcomes of the people who came before, and we know that they were better.
I'm saying that child services wasn't as present.
Now, Alex, just restate verbatim what you said, because Andrew, that wasn't verbatim, but when it comes to the government researching, what was your point?
The point I was making is that government agencies like child services, for example, did not have the popularity they have now, and there was less ways for kids to report abuse or report negative outcomes. That's one possibility.
Wait a minute. Wait.
Yeah.
So we're taking one at a time. What do you mean report negative outcomes? We can just see the outcomes. They don't have to report it. We can see their graduation rates. We can see their literacy rates. We can see their job and employment rates. We can see the lack of homelessness rates. We can see the lack of antisocial drugs that they were on. We can see all of those things. We don't need their fucking reporting. We can just see it.
Okay, I misunderstood you. I thought you were talking about happiness. Okay, if we're going off those factors, then it will come down to any number of things that happened in the last 30 years. Could be pornography. That's probably playing a role. Probably technology. Probably a lack of, communities. Probably a lack of purpose. I mean, there's so many things that are playing a role in why kids nowadays are having worse outcomes. There's a correlation there, but I don't know if there's a causation there.
Okay, so again, if it's just a correlate and not a causation, and you are making the affirmative claim that it must have something to do with things outside of this, as at least some strong correlate. So it's the strongest correlate, the no-fault divorce, or isn't it?
I don't know. I don't have an answer to that.
How many more divorces are there percentage-wise because of no fault? Like, how much has it gone up, would you say, Andrew?
It's a significant increase. I'm going to have the chart pulled in just a second, so I'll give you the actual data on this so that you can see the significant increase in divorce. But
1970.
Not just an increase in divorce. Andrew. I'm saying, do you have any statistics on specifically isolated for no fault? That's what I was curious of.
Well, what do you mean isolated for no fault?
Well, I just don't want to see that divorces have gone up in X amount of time. I want to see how much divorce has gone up because of no fault.
Okay. So hang on. Again, if that's what you want to see, Markus, I think that's fair. So let's see if we can walk through this. Are you ready? Would you say that no fault divorce is a strong correlate for the increase in divorce or not?
Well, I don't have the data on that. I'm not sure.
Okay.
To be honest with you.
Okay. Well, so here, I'll pull the studies while you guys engage, and we'll circle back to this. But I am going to circle back to this.
I guess just generally speaking, how could you not see that that's a correlate? Like if women are in a,
we all agree it's a correlate.
Well, okay. Well, Markus just said he didn't agree. He needed
No,
to see
no,
the
no.
data.
I said agree. I just don't know by how much. That's what I'm asking.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Because if it's
my
1%, right? Let's say it increases by 1%.
Okay, so I have over
I don't
one
think that's-
dozen studies.
that matters,
One
right?
dozen studies.
If
I'm
he
going to text
says
them.
it's
I'm going to
increased
text
it
them
by
to Alex right now.
4,000%,
Just post them in the
then
private
I think
chat.
So
it's
the dozen
be
studies and
interesting,
stats proving the broken homes are causal,
Can you-
not
can you just
correlated
put it
to
in the
poor
private-
outcomes in kids. Right? I'm going to state what these studies say, and then you guys live can go through these studies and let's watch and see. But yes, it's not just a correlate.
Can you send me the study or?
Yes,
Post
I'm texting them to you right now.
in the private chat.
Yeah,
Whoever.
could you
I
post
don't
that
have a
private
way.
chat?
I don't have a way to put them in the private chat.
Yeah.
My brain hurts about this shit. But are you
I
guys
know, so does mine.
seriously? Are you seriously like the prospect of going through these studies and you guys like nitpicking them and fucking but actually my mom was pretty cool and
No, looking at studies is
it-
important, Richie.
well, okay, fair enough, go for it. But can't you like just think about it logically, right? If women who you know well, right, because you're pickup artists, right, like you understand how women function, understand how they think, right?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Would you find them to be particularly accountable when they do something wrong?
Depends on the woman. Some yes, some no.
Of
depends.
course, generally
would-
speaking.
I would not say gender-wise, women
Yeah,
are not
men are the
responsible for
same
their
way.
actions and men are.
Is that like part of your plan to get laid?
Why you asked that question?
No, that's why.
Do you think women don't take responsibility compared to men?
Of
Do you think
course
men
not. It's
take
like a meme,
responsibility?
dude. Well, far more often than women do, generally speaking. But of course,
I don't
there
agree
are
with that at all.
exceptions.
Yeah, what are you basing that on? I don't know. Where are you getting that from?
Hatred, Marcus.
Okay.
Sounds like-
Sorry.
If
I've seen so many men not take responsibility for their lives. That's insane. So I don't know.
well, fair enough, but society doesn't sort of reward those men for not taking responsibility. They don't get sympathy. Like if you have a buddy that's fucking up at work and he fucks up big time, like fireable offense, and he gets fired, you're like, you feel bad for him, but it's like, hey, you fucked up, man. But if a woman does it and she comes to you crying, it's like a different emotional response. Women get away with shit like that far more often than men do.
Okay, so so are you trying to make the argument that women take responsibility less than men? Is that the point you're going to make?
I'm trying to appeal to your general understanding of just your interactions with women, right? Like this is like what you guys do, right? Like this is your PUAs.
So you're asking for total experience from
precisely.
But I'm sorry, but my answer isn't going to change. I think I've seen both countless men and countless women not take responsibility and vice versa. I don't know which one. My position on this is agnostic. I don't know which one takes responsibility less. I would say it's probably pretty close. I would say probably it's similar percentages of men and women not taking responsibility. But if you have some kind of source or something like that,
sure, yeah. Well, okay,
hang on. I've now sent you tons. I've texted you tons. If you can put them in the private chat, I can't do that because just the way that I'm streaming. But I sent you tons and tons of sources now, over the top amounts, showing not only the rampant rates of abuse, but the ties in to no-fault divorce. You can even see the phenomenon in the UK. It's tied in for the no-fault divorces. Like I can't make it any clearer at how much the tie-in is to no-fault divorces. Here's another one.
Okay, can I take a look at it or
go ahead, take your time?
Yeah, so guys,
20 seconds.
Let's table no fault divorce and move on to another topic of interest. What was another point of contention did we have? We were talking many things.
Well, those were the two topics. I'm happy to move on into
just while we do that, we'll circle back to it.
Yeah, so I am happy to move on if you guys want to into another topic. It doesn't matter to me, but there's plenty of data which associates this with no fault divorce. And our opponents, by the way, their only counter argument was, well,
circling back. Fair enough. Let's go back to downside of sex. Premarital for men. What's the downside? That's one we never really got to the bottom of. A body count.
I'll just have to go through these studies later because there's a lot.
Yeah, there's tons of data.
Andrew, you don't have any data.
I don't have any data except that tons.
Andrew,
I don't have any time.
Got a point of contention.
Do you want to take 15 minutes? I'll go through the data.
Alex claimed that married men.
If there's a chance that you'll actually see it and be like, oh fuck,
Richy,
there actually is a correlation.
Hi.
I'm 100%.
Hi, Richy. How you doing? So Alex made a claim that married men versus single men have the same STD rates. Andrew, I saw you looked at that study, and I heard you earlier. Am I incorrect? Where I heard you say that that was not correct. You read that. You don't agree that the study shows that or reflects that?
Well, the not at the data that I'm looking at, which I also sent that over to Alex. So if you're talking about the data that I see, shows that the STD rate in married men is only 3.5%, and then 20% in the unmarried men. Now, of course, this depends on how you want to divide up the data. You know what I mean? It always depends on how you want to divide up the data. I'll resend it to you in just a second. But this is what I'm seeing. I'm seeing completely different rates than what he's saying. And by the way, that actually follows. Why wouldn't it follow that people, especially people who are in intact marriages, their rates significantly decrease, whereas people who engage in multiple sex partners, their risk significantly increases. So the thing is,
there's a reason why homosexuals had a higher rate of HIV.
No one cares about homosexuals. I'll explain it one more time. Explain it initially.
They're having sex with more people. Okay. Higher risk.
I understand that gay people have a lot of sex. Because when you're married, you generally don't use condoms with your wife, right? Because there's an element of trust. And I think we can all agree there's a lot of cheating that happens. So even though they have less total sex
to the level of
hang on, because they're not using protection, right? That's what counterbalances the risk. So yes, people who are living.
This is a totally wild claim.
Just relax, dude. People who are single do probably have more sex than married people, have more partners, but they're typically more likely to use condoms. Since condoms are 99.9% effective, 5% effective, if used properly, that is the reason for that. That's what the author says. That's not what I said. That's what the author says.
Actually, text me your study on
my
this.
Opinion is on this, even if there's high rates among single people,
I can't access that.
I don't think that's a reason not to have premarital sex. I think it's a very small risk that you might get an STI, especially if you're being careful about it. But that wouldn't be a reason for me to tell someone not to have premarital sex.
Well, it's not just that. There'd be there's a risk of pregnancy, which is another factor. Not only is there a risk of pregnancy, but then you can move into the way that you have evaluated women. So it would logically follow that if you're making the claim that if a woman has X amount on a body count, it raises a red flag with you, then how can you explain that except to say that every single time a woman has sex with a man, it devalues her as far as men are concerned,
right? To a certain point, if the woman has a 400 leg count, of course, if she's got a 5 leg count, I don't consider that devalued at all. Me personally, I think a lot of men would actually prefer a girl that has some experience, right? Sure, not 300. That's be a red flag. But someone's been with 3 guys, 4 guys, I think that's a problem. And I would consider the girls that I actually sleep with and have slept with before, I would never consider them devalued, even if we're making the argument that a high leg count is going to devalue them.
Because that's because your highest priority is the sexual pleasure that you're receiving.
Richie, you know nothing about me or Marcus at all. You're just purely talking out of your ass. And this goes back to the point I was making earlier. You're talking about when you say, devalues the woman. You're talking about social repercussions.
What else could it be except pleasure?
Okay, social. So
when I have sex with someone, you're sharing a very intimate experience. You're both being incredibly
pleasurable. A pleasurable experience.
Of course it's pleasurable.
Yeah, so what else is it? So when he says that you're hedonist, you're just focusing on pleasure, why is he wrong?
Your main goal is you keep doing the shit where you like
getting married is pleasurable, isn't it?
I keep doing this shit called logic. Learn it.
You keep doing the shit where you purposely
where you need to learn logic. That's a you problem. Answer my question. Stop obfuscating every 5 seconds.
He didn't say Richie said it's his only goal. He didn't say it's one of his goals.
I said his primary goal.
Right, his main goal. How do you know that? How do you know
primary is different than only?
Okay, I'm going to tell you it's not pleasure. If it was just pleasure, I just get prostitutes and fuck.
Then tell me what else it is. Tell me what else it is.
I just told you get to build a connection with a girl, right?
Is that pleasurable or not pleasurable?
All of this is going to be pleasurable. Are you kidding?
Right. So then it's all pleasure.
Pleasurable.
Andrew, let Marcus finish.
Everything is pleasure. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you could argue essentially, right? Anything positive is going to be
everything is not pleasurable.
Having
people who are chaste. Wait. So you're saying that people who are chaste and not engaging in sex, even though they want to, that's pleasurable for them?
Say it again.
Andrew, is having sex with your wife pleasurable?
Are you saying that people who are chaste and would like to have sex but do not because they feel like it's a duty not to do so, that's pleasurable to them?
Yeah, it probably is.
Why? Why would that be pleasurable? They want to do. They want to do a thing, but they can't do the thing. Why would that be pleasurable?
Andrew, is having sex with your wife pleasurable?
Why won't you let this guy answer a fucking question?
Well, I just want you to get answers to a few questions.
There's different
I've
types
been
of pleasure,
answering them
right? There's
nonstop.
different types of pleasure. So when I withhold from eating a Big Mac, I actually find that pleasurable because I'm meeting my diet goals, for example. If you're someone that really believes that sex is bad and you're withholding yourself from doing it, you probably feel a sense of pleasure from doing that. With myself, just because I'm having sex doesn't mean it's just for pleasure physically, tactically. There's a lot more that goes on with sex. It's a very intimate experience. It's very vulnerable that you share with a person. There's a lot more that goes into that. When I lay down with a girl after having incredible sex with her and we're cuddling and staring into each other's eyes, yes, it's pleasurable, but it's more than just, oh, I'm fucking this girl because I just want to get my dick hard, right?
So then, from your worldview, as Richy just stated, the purview of consequentialism for you is everything is under a pleasure dynamic. So you believe that if you abstain from something, it's pleasurable. If you don't abstain from something, it's pleasurable, but it's all based around your pleasure.
No, I'm not saying that at all.
Then give me something that's not based around pleasure.
Okay, then we can go back to sexual compatibility. I might just be having sex with this girl. I'm not saying just. This is a part of it to figure out if this is someone I actually want to spend more time with. Because if this is going to be awful and we don't match and it's awkward and it doesn't feel right, then I don't want to spend any more time with this girl in a relationship.
Because it's not as pleasurable.
It's not compatible. It's the same way if you were to meet someone, right? And you go on a date and this girl is just a fucking asshole. And
You're a fucking coon brain, dude.
It's not going to be pleasurable.
I like Richy's random.
Right, it's not going to be pleasurable. I agree. It's all based around pleasure.
What framework?
We gotta get Richy an exorcist.
Oh, we operate around Christian deontology, not around pleasure and consequentialism.
Is having sex with your wife pleasurable, Andrew? Are you going to answer that?
Of course.
Okay.
I don't even see why that's a problem. I'm happy.
You're just doing that for pleasure.
Yeah, there can be. Hang on. There is intersection. Stop interrupting, Ashley. We're having a pleasant conversation. There is.
She's a moderator. You have to let her talk, man.
There is intersection between. There is intersection here between different ethical standards. So I'm not saying that all pleasure is bad. That's ridiculous. I'm just asking you for a mode or a model that you operate off of that's not purely based around pleasures in your brain, because I think that that's the modus operandi for you, just like it is for Alex. I think both of you base everything around whatever pleasures you're getting out of it, and you don't really give a shit ultimately.
But what I was going to say is Markus brought up things.
Andrew, if I ever need a therapist, I'm definitely going to hit you up.
If I thought that my pleasure, sorry.
Yeah, let Ashley get an order.
Sorry, Ashley. Yeah, if I thought that my pleasure, right, say I was having every time I had sex with someone, it killed them, right? Then obviously I wouldn't want to be having sex with them. Okay, so to just say it's just pleasure is obviously not true.
That actually doesn't even make sense. What are you talking about?
If I enjoyed fucking a girl, but it means she died afterwards because I had a deadly dick, right? Then
she has HIV.
Yeah. So then, under your worldview, you just got done telling me that you would do that action because you find it the most pleasurable for you.
Oh, he just said
not engage in it.
Oh my God.
No, hang on. I can give you. I will give you the counter example.
Because
literally
part of it is pleasurable.
Bro, hang on. Shut up, Alex. Let us finish our exchange. One more time, Markus.
I love Alex's random interjection.
I'll tell you what. We're gonna be completely quiet. We're gonna be. Me and Richy will be completely quiet, and then you ask the question again and let me answer it.
Which
Go
question?
ahead. Market. Okay, so then if you don't have a question, let me finish.
I'm just asking you.
So here's, and I'm trying, Alex, stop talking.
You're not
so
trying.
one more time, previously I asked you this. I said, if a person has a duty to not have sex and abstain from sex, even though they want to have sex, would you consider that to be pleasure? You said yes. So under this same exact,
it could be pleasurable for someone to abstain from something they don't want to do.
No, your exact words were yes.
Yeah, it could be, yes. Yeah,
okay, so now it could be.
Every single time. The example of the Big Mac, maybe I really want a Big Mac and I don't have it and it's fucking miserable. Or maybe it feels really good because I'm staying with my diet plan. It could be both, is what I was saying.
Yeah, so under your worldview, then, if a person feels that they have a duty to abstain or be chaste, that doesn't necessarily mean that that's the most pleasurable thing for them then, correct?
Yeah, correct.
Okay,
yeah,
great. So now that we have that answer and we're moving back into yours, why would you want to have promiscuous sex with multiple women external to pleasure? What is the duty there? I don't see it.
I'm not encouraging everyone to have promiscuous sex.
I'm talking about you specifically.
All I'm saying is you shouldn't stop people from doing it. right?
Yeah, okay, but I'm
That's the
asking
difference.
you a direct question, and the direct question is, can you tell me what it is for you, which is external to pleasure, for why you do that?
Why I have sex external to pleasure? I just said
We're getting
multiple
into
times. I get to
preoppositionals,
build a
yeah.
connection with the girl. I get to be vulnerable with her. I get to understand if we're compatible. I get to understand if this is a relationship I want to move forward.
Can't you do all those things without having sex with them?
Not to the same level. Yeah, you
Why?
probably could, but not to the same level.
So the pleasure aspect seems
Because-
to be the deciding tipping factor for you, yeah?
Not the deciding tipping factor, no.
Well, then why can't you engage
Pleasure
in
is-
all of
look,
those activities external of
Pleasure
having sex
is a
with a
huge
woman?
part of sex, okay? No one is denying that. Everyone, well, I hope everyone's having great sex and enjoying it. But that's not the only reason I do it. As I mentioned, once again, there are many other reasons to it.
What if all of those?
But you can
factors
do all
were-
of those things
yeah.
without having
what if
sex
that
with
all-
them.
Exactly.
Not as
What
well.
if that all
Not as
aligned?
What do you
well.
mean not
What if-
as well? Why?
If I meet,
what if
if I
that-
meet two girls,
icky.
right? If I meet two girls and one I don't have sex with and one I do, I can guarantee you I will understand if
Angela,
we're
let me ask
compatible
this
as a relationship a lot quicker with the girl I'm having sex with.
Why?
Because it's a shared, very intimate experience, right? So I would argue it's almost the same as if I was to go on a holiday with one of the girls as opposed to the other, right?
So the most
you get to
important
see a lot
aspect for
more
you.
about her.
So then the most important aspect for you
And
is
sexual
indeed the sex.
compatibility, which is a huge part of a
So
relationship.
then the most important part for you actually is the sex, which is what I stated before and you disagreed with.
No, I didn't say. When did I ever say it's the most important?
So
I said it will help you.
Well, it has to be
compared
the
to the
most
two, it will
important
help.
because you say these other factors
No, I
are
did
are
not say
not
it's the most
even. You
important.
said these other factors you can't really determine them without the sexual aspect, right?
Andrew,
I
why
said
do
you
you smoke?
could,
Why do you smoke a
But you
drink?
could understand it
You've
a
had
lot
pleasure.
better if you do have sex with them.
Okay.
Marcus,
I didn't say it's
what if-
100%.
Marcus,
It could
okay,
even
okay.
be 10%.
Let me.
Wait,
I
wait. I want to
question.
get a question in. Andrew, why do you smoke and drink besides pleasure?
Because I like it.
Pleasure.
Yeah.
So
right.
it seems like pleasure is a huge motivator in your life as well.
It's a motivator for me to smoke and drink. What does that have to do with the price of tea in China?
Was it pleasurable getting married to your wife?
Of course.
Marcus, hold on,
Oh,
Marcus.
so
Let me
it's
ask you
just
this.
did it for
These
pleasure.
literally
Can I
have
ask you-
nothing to
can
do
I
with
ask
each
you-
other.
You got
No,
married.
it
They have
actually
nothing to do with
absolutely
each
does.
other.
You're going after
Marcus,
Marcus
Yes.
being
Yes,
motivated
there's
by
also
pleasure.
I wanna
beneficial
know.
systems.
You're
Yes.
motivated
I
by
want to
pleasure
know.
as well.
I want to know. I want to
Okay.
know. It's fine. I'm willing to answer any questions or like whatever.
Go ahead.
I'm
Go
trying
ahead.
to
What do
say.
you want to ask?
Okay. But okay. So Marcus, if let's imagine a scenario where you had this girl that was great in every aspect, right?
Mhm.
But you didn't have sex with her yet.
Mhm.
Would you marry her, not knowing that you would have, like, knowing that you didn't really know how she was in bed?
No, I wouldn't marry her.
Then the most important part
Is
No.
the
of
sex.
your
Because
relationship
I would say
is
that
sexual
about-
compatibility.
I would say that. Let me answer this. I would say that about plenty of other categories. If she was good in every single way, but she never wanted to have kids, then I probably wouldn't marry her. Now, is that going to be the most important thing? No, it's just one deal breaker. Bad sex is one deal breaker. No kids is one deal breaker. Not wanting to travel is another deal breaker. I have
No
plenty
kids
of
is a deal breaker?
breakers for
Wait a
someone
second.
that I wouldn't
Yeah,
marry.
she's the perfect woman, but
Is
once a
that a
month,
deal? Is that a
once
deal
a month,
breaker?
once a month, she
Once
smokes
a month, she
meth.
murders people.
She smokes
Yeah.
meth and she fucking crashes her car. But
Yeah. So this is a
no,
pivot.
every other time she's perfect.
Yeah,
But
this
it's
is a
deal
pivot.
breaker.
Hang on.
So
This is a
these-
Sex
this
these
is
are
a
my deal
pivot.
breakers.
contributing factor for me,
Wait, it's
but
not-
not
it's
the
not
main
pivot.
one.
It
It's
is.
one that's
I'll
not good.
explain how it's a pivot. So we're asking Markus about Markus specifically, and Markus moves on to a generalization and says, "Well, it could be for some people. This is a
No,
deal
I'll say
breaker.
about me.
That's a deal
No, no,
breaker.
Just
I'll
trying
say
to
for
do
about
this
you,
weird
so for you, is a woman who won't
Me
have
personally.
children a deal breaker for you?
To get
This
married
is-
to, yes.
This is just
that is
a
deal breaker.
weird pre-oppositionalist
Okay.
shit where you're trying to make. I know the exact point you're going to try to make. You do every debate, super boring. Like, oh, but Marcus, you don't have any like central philosophy to back up your claims, and I do because I read the Bible, and the Bible is like.
I didn't ask him a single. I didn't ask him a single biblical claim.
Yeah,
I'm
but
just
you're going.
asking
The point you're going to try to make is that
Oh yeah, I'm
you
supposed
have
to
a-
keep
you have a
everything
ground-
surface so that
you
you
have a
fucking
grounding
dimwits can
philosophy.
understand it.
you have a
So I gotta
grounding
keep everything
philosophy, you
simplistic.
guys-
Compatibility.
So
this
you
is the
fucking
argument you
dimwits
try to
can
make
get it.
every single time.
Not smart.
Okay.
Not smart people.
Well, why have sex with women, Marcus? I can't use higher grade philosophy because Alex don't like it. His brain not work good.
You make this
I don't
argument
understand
every
how
single
you can't
debate.
fathom that
Well,
sex
is that
a
good enough
part
for
of
you,
what
Alex?
makes it compatible with a girl.
Oh, you don't know you don't have a grounding philosophy. I do. Therefore,
Yes,
I'm
I'm
right.
sorry that your worldview has to be consistent. That's terrible, Alex.
I'm
I feel
sorry
so
that my
bad for you.
worldview is not consistent with a 2,000-year-old made-up book.
It's not
Well,
even consistent
Alex,
within
if
its own worldview. That's the
Alex, if
problem.
it makes
would
any
rather-
difference, I know a Neanderthal type man who does have a consolidated worldview. So there's hope yet.
Well, that's rare because
I mean,
I
I've
believe,
got a
I
question
believe they're
for
all
Andrew,
dead.
actually.
Wait, Richie,
I've got a
okay,
question
go
for
ahead,
Andrew.
go ahead.
Andrew, would you, I'm just curious, actually, would you marry a woman that would never have sex with you?
Of course
ever?
not. Of course not.
So sex is the most important thing for you.
No, in this particular case, I have a duty.
Exactly.
A
So if we
duty.
have shared.
Hang on,
there's
stop.
Sex that
I'm
goes
going to
into it,
explain.
correct?
There's a distinction here. You are operating under the purview of promiscuous sex even outside of marriage and saying that it's not the sex itself, which is the thing that's really the high value. It's the fucking cuddling and getting to know them aspect, which is bullshit. But even if I assumed that that was true,
I'm not
if
saying
you're
the
moving into
cuddling and getting
marriage,
to know them is the most important
a
thing in
functional
sex
part,
either.
a functional part of marriage is what? Procreation. That's also a duty of mine. That requires sex last time I checked, and it's going to always require sex.
Do you
So
and your
yes,
wife
of
only have
course.
sex to
Just wanted to
procreate?
make sure.
And I
You
didn't say
said you have
sex is only for procreation. I gave an example of how it's your duty to procreate. And also, the way that a marriage works inside of our viewpoint is that it's a symbiosis between the church. The man is symbolizing Christ as the head of the church and the woman as the body of the church. And yes, of course, it's okay for a husband and wife to have sex. It's actually encouraged in many ways because you do get all of those connectional values, etc.
You have 5 kids, but you probably had sex hundreds and hundreds of times with your wife. Therefore, 99% of your sexual experience with your wife is about pleasure, not duty.
Even if that was true, it would not negate my point.
How is that not true? You have multiple motivations.
I just told you, even if it was true, it doesn't negate anything. Yes, of course, having sex with my wife is pleasurable. Negates nothing I just said.
Right. So the point you're trying to make is that Markus only operates on pleasure and you don't. But it seems that both of you guys operate largely on
there's
pleasure.
Overlap.
And
there's going to be
well.
Bro, I'm claiming that there is overlap. Of course, there's overlap between these different systems. But in order for him to be consistent, he's literally trying to convince us that the promiscuous sex that he's out there having, or the promiscuous sex that you're out there having, has the sex itself is not. That's not really what's important. It's the kissing and hand holding and cuddling.
I never said that's
and that's
how do you know? Are you hiding in the
did I say that's listen, I love pleasure. I love sliding my, I don't know if we can swear on this.
You can say whatever you want.
I love sliding my cock in them, all right? It's fun.
You were talking about cousin fucking earlier.
I'm saying
dude.
that's all the.
I believe you brought that up, Richie.
Yeah, Ricky's going back to the cousin. He loves it.
So then the most important aspect of it is the sex. Why don't you just concede that that's true finally?
It's one of the important
if it
things.
Was, I just fuck prostitutes, right?
Did you said a girl could be
bro? You can't have it both
ways. And if the sex was bad, you wouldn't marry her. Which means that the most defining aspect.
Oh, it doesn't.
I wouldn't marry her.
That's one of the deal breakers. There's multiple deal breakers.
I wouldn't marry her.
Perfect in every single way.
And if she was
the problem is that either one of these things has to be true because it's just logic, right? Either A, what you're trying to convince us of, that sex is not the most important thing, but whether it's the kissing, hand holding, cuddling, and getting to know the woman, right? Either that's the truth or that the sex is the primary component. I have a difficult time believing, I struggle to believe, if you're going to be good faith about this, that you actually are trying to convince us that the kissing and cuddling and hand holding and getting to know the woman is the most important aspect of why you're banging lots of chicks. That's insane.
Well,
the most
important
aspect.
Sex was the most,
so many fucking times.
He's just trying to leave his avenues open because he wants more pussy. He can't be seen on the internet saying, it's just if you got a good gash.
Sex for me. Having sex for me is multiple factors, right? It is not just the sex. Otherwise, as I said, I just fuck prostitutes and I wouldn't care and that would be it. It's going to be partly a little bit of validation. It's going to be partly the interesting skill set behind it. It's going to be exploring kinks. It's going to be developing your own skill set. It's going to be the cuddling with the girl. It's going to be getting to know her. It's going to be the shared vulnerability. There's so many aspects.
And we're honing in on the most important
aspect. They're going to keep doing this weird shit where they try to say, but it's the most important. I want to redirect and ask Richie a question. It's directly related to this.
Of course,
Richie,
sure, man.
Are you married?
No.
Why not?
I just gave a brief history of it earlier on. Were you not listening?
Just quickly repeat it.
Reiterate for us, Richie. I wasn't listening.
Sure. I knew this was going to go here because it always does with PUA guys, but I don't care. Whatever. I was in several long relationships, 4 or 5 years. And then afterwards, I sort of lost my faith in God, or rather I became agnostic and became a hedonist for a while longer. Well, longer than I should have. Well, doing a day as a hedonist is longer than you should have. And then I sort of came to the okay. You know what it was? It was Stefan Molyneux, and he was talking about how women pair bond with people. And I realized that I was actually doing more harm than good by sleeping with women that I didn't have any intention of marrying. And it put me in a difficult spot. So now I'm in my 30s, and I'm looking around, and most women are either single mothers or married. And yeah, it's tough, man. I put myself here.
When did you give up on hedonism? When did you switch over to become more?
I still haven't entirely. Like, I still smoke and stuff, right? Like, there's still physical pleasure in my life.
I'm talking about purely in terms of sex.
3 years ago, 4 years ago.
Okay. So like so for the last 3-4 years,
the death of my father made me really heavily reflect on my life and my choices. So there you go.
I'm sorry to hear about that, man. I'm not.
Well, it's whatever. I'm not trying to like use it as. I'm just saying like that's what.
No, I understand. Yeah, but so it kind of begs the question: if like in your philosophy, like, are you going to say that for the last 3-4 years you haven't had sex at all? Then,
correct.
Okay, interesting. So I guess you've had 4 years. Why have you not been able to get married if that's the most important thing in your worldview?
Well, dating market's hard, man. Welcome to America. Like I said, those stats earlier.
That's where pickup comes in. Richie, I'll hook you up with a free ebook. Okay, I have now.
Yeah, so that way you can get a bunch of virtueless skanks who want to have sex with pickup artists.
Yeah, precisely.
Awesome.
Dude, I'm 6'5". I'm 6'5", 190 pounds, objectively more handsome than you. You think I had problem pulling pussy when I just had no problem? Like,
well, for the last 4 years, you haven't been able to.
It's not that I haven't been able to. I'm looking for a virtuous person. Do you understand the distinction?
You've been doing it for 4 years.
I can go to the bar and fuck a skank.
Well, no one's talking about that.
Basically, anytime I want to.
You for 4 years, you haven't been able to accomplish your dating goal.
But just remember, if you were doing that, Richie, if you were going to a bar and picking up skanks, it wouldn't be about the sex. It's because you want to hug and cuddle and look into their eyes late at night.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
You haven't been. Hang
on. You guys obviously have no idea what good sex looks like. Honestly, you have zero idea what good sex looks like.
4 years.
And sorry, I'll just finish it. If you're going to a club and seeing it as just like picking up a skank and fucking her and then kicking her out, of course the sex is going to be horrible. And I tell you what, it's not going to be pleasurable. You can keep making jokes about, oh, you hug and cuddle. That's a big part of sex is aftercare, especially kinky sex that is very enjoyable and pleasurable, which I'm sure you'll go back to. But sex is more than just putting your dick in someone.
Markus, you're speaking Chinese right now. This is
no, sorry, go for it, Alex.
Yeah,
Richie, if you're so
I don't understand how to have hedonistic sex over years.
Yeah, it's bizarre. It's a foreign concept to us. Tell us more.
I'm not telling you should do that, Richie. If you're so successful, hang on, don't run away. If you're so successful with women, then why have you not been able to achieve your dating goal, which is getting married to a virtuous woman, for the last 4 years? 4 years, you have not been able to achieve your relationship goal. Why is that? If you're so good with women,
if you're so I'm good with women, it's good. I'm good with picking up whores, but also at my age, like, it's tough, man. Dating market's hard. Like, if you're really looking for, I'm not going to say specifically. I'm doing my best not to dox myself. 73.
Like 30s, 20s, 40s.
Oh yeah, I'm 18. No, but anyway, it's
wait. Why can't you?
PUA guys reflexively do this, but it's like you and I share an entirely different set of values. Any advice?
Just engage.
Any advice that you would want to give
that was a joke.
I'm not basically any advice that you would want to give me is basically a way of sort of demeaning or like
okay.
Putting me on a lower platitude.
That was a joke. I'm not actually trying to give you advice. That was a joke. It's called humor.
Right.
Okay, so
very alpha of you, homie.
So okay, I don't understand why
the fucking arguments.
I don't understand why you can't just answer what like age, like your 20s, 30s. I'm not asking you to give me your exact age. Just give me like a ballpark.
Who gives a shit? Just go to the point.
Because he said.
Do you have a fucking point to make?
Yeah,
make the point. He said in his age.
All you're doing right now is
in his age.
You're posturing on the internet.
No, that's what you guys are doing.
He's in his 30s. He's in his 30s.
Okay, there we go. I don't know why it took us 5 minutes to get there. So yeah, in your 30s,
he said that, bro.
In your 30s, you have spent 4 years trying to find a virtuous woman, and you have not been able to do so. Because it's so hard when you're in your 30s.
Well, it's not even so much just virtuous, but a lot of the women my age have children, and that's a very like serious decision to make. I've had siblings and family members that have like married single women, and of course hasn't worked out. It's a very difficult thing to do.
But in your worldview, wouldn't it be your duty? And especially if they had
to marry to raise somebody else's children? Not necessarily. I mean, whatever. My father did it. I'm not like opposed to it morally necessarily, but it's also, you know, not super attractive. If you marry a girl that
it's not about pleasure, it's not about what's attractive.
If you marry a girl that got her gender studies degree that has $200,000 in debt and you're expected to pay that off, that's not attractive either.
Richie, but the child will have a better outcome
if
you help take care of the kid. Shouldn't you do it and to give the child a better outcome?
No. Like if the kid is already being taken care of by the father, like financially.
No. Let's assume it's a single mother.
Story.
Oh, is that a different story now, Richie?
Wait, Ashley, no. You can't.
Sorry, Ashley.
Save it for after.
I forgot. I'm so
Richie. So you're the biggest duty is to give a kid.
All right. So, like, I don't mind following. I don't. Hold on.
Why don't you marry?
I don't mind. Look, it's whatever. You can get as personal with me as you want, but I just want to make a distinction here. I want to make it clear that you guys fucking got wrecked on this debate, and now you're trying to like go into like.
This is the guy that made like 30 minutes in because you had no retort. Fuck off, Rich.
Wait, Ashley, no, come on.
Stop.
Is a single mom getting offended?
We gotta be fair. Hang on. Let's strike that from the record. We're gonna strike that from the record.
Cool. Our moderator is offended because I'm attacking.
I'm not offended. I'm not offended.
All right, Richie.
Here's a little emotional.
Here's what I'm trying to explain to you: is that there's a lot of inconsistencies and hypocrisies in a lot of the shit that you guys say, and one of the hypocrisies,
like what?
I'm literally about to tell you if you just wait 2 seconds. One of the hypocrisies is that you say like, oh, well, you know, it's a duty, you know, it's the duty to take care of kids and give the kids the best outcome. But you know that if you marry a single mother, that kid will have a better outcome.
That's because the man who was supposed to be taking care of him has shirked his duty and the mom. Do you understand the distinction there?
Shouldn't you step in and give the kid a better
It's not my duty to step in and stop you because you have not completed your own. Now, would I help? Yes, I would help, but that doesn't mean that I have a dutiful obligation to take care of your children in lieu of my own. My highest duty would be to my own children, Alex.
We all get that, but then why is it your duty?
Well, then if you get that, what's the argument?
Why is it your duty to overturn no-fault divorce? Because that's not your fuck up.
Because I have a certain type of society which I think is preferable for everybody to live in, and that society is not filled to the brim with single mothers who are creating mentally ill lunatics all over our streets.
But it's more preferable for Richie to marry the single mom and help raise the kid.
Why is that more preferable? Tell me why that would be a better outcome when you look at the outcomes with stepdads. They're not great.
In your worldview.
No, the worldview, the stepdad is also problematic. So when you're talking about the statistics with the stepfather coming in, the rates of molestation and everything else skyrocket. So when we're talking about intact homes, we're talking about the duty between the biological parents and their own children, and they're shirking their duties. So you guys are going off on some wild tangent.
In your worldview,
we know.
They're basically trying to find
no,
personal flaws. If I would have just lied and said, "Yeah, I have 5 kids,"
would you not allow people
they wouldn't have anything.
Mothers? In your worldview,
go ahead, Marcus, with your question.
Yeah, in your worldview, if marrying a single mum led to worse outcomes for the kids, would that mean you wouldn't want anyone to marry single mums?
If you mean on average, that. Yes. Yeah. So the thing is that if you're looking at averages for stepfathers, it's not optimal. What's optimal is if you have the parents who are intact. That's what's optimal. No, I just answered the question. It's implicit in the question. So if it's a bad outcome to have stepfathers, you probably shouldn't have a stepfather. However, everything is case. I'm not saying I would ban it. We're talking about what's optimal. When you're talking about individualistic cases, I think that those have to be arbitrated individually. And I've never said anything to the contrary. However, that doesn't mean that we want to create a society where people are having to make those decisions over and over and over again, because what we're producing is a single motherhood machine. Do you understand the distinction?
Well, let's talk hypothetically, right?
Talking hypothetically.
Let's say our society has a lot of single mothers right now.
Yeah.
And let's say, according to you, that having a guy come in and marry those mothers would lead to worse outcomes from the kids on average. Would you ban people from marrying single mothers?
I wouldn't even ban. I wouldn't ban most of the things I advocate against. I just ask for a separate adjudication system based on the ethical standards that people have. That's one. And then the second thing is, I think that individualism or individual arbitration for something like that is just fine. People can make good choices for stepfathers for their children. People can make good choices. Let me finish, bro.
Sorry, go for
People
it.
can make good decisions individually for those things. But what we should be doing always is pushing for a societal outcome which is optimal. So if we're looking at hang on, stop. I'm almost done. If we're looking at what's optimal for society, it's the intact parents. They also have a duty to their own children. So these are optimals.
So you're saying that individuals should make that decision. It shouldn't be forced upon them.
No, I'm saying ultimately each individual is going to have to make their decision. However, from a policy prescription standpoint and from a societal prescription standpoint of what society is pushing, people are more likely to make good decisions if the normalization of good decisions is what's raised up as being virtuous as a standard to follow rather than being pushed against. An example of this, again, would be like LGBTQ propaganda has drastically increased the rates of people. No, I'm giving you an example. We're not getting into LGBTQ. I'm just giving you an example of propaganda. So if you look at propaganda for that, that's why you see so many people who identify along the LGBTQ lines is due to that propaganda. If that propaganda didn't exist, it's likely that they wouldn't identify that way. So when we're looking at societal outcomes, we're looking at what we're trying to push for optimization.
Okay, and so going back to what we're talking about, so you would push that people should not get in relationships with single mothers.
I don't think that it would be optimal. So the single motherhood pandemic that we have right now, I think that it's far better for us to push as much propaganda as we can everywhere that we can. That the next generation, specifically the next generation, understands these stats that they can make better decisions. And if they make those better decisions, we won't have the same single motherhood pandemic. There's no curing it right now. Even if you have stepfathers, not stepfathers, it's an incurable crisis.
So back to my question, would you encourage people not to get married to single mothers?
No, I'm not encouraging that. I'm just saying that it's not an optimal solution for most people.
Okay, so you wouldn't encourage it even though it's not optimal.
Yeah, that's correct. So what?
Okay, but you're all about what's optimal and encouraging that a second ago.
Yeah, so you're talking about a distinction of the micro versus macro. So when I'm talking about a macro distinction, I'm talking about what I want to see society pushing for as normalcy versus a micro distinction where I say that individuals largely are going to have some control over their own life. There's no doubt that that's true. But at the macro level, the push in propaganda is definitely going to influence at the micro level how they make those decisions.
I'm talking macro for both, right? It seems like macro, you're pushing for no fault. You're pushing for no sex before marriage. Right. At a macro level is what I was asking. Would you encourage people at a macro level not to marry single mothers? And it sounds like you wouldn't do that. I'm just wondering.
I would push the propaganda away from that and push for a more intact family homes, or at the very least, if you're going to have a blended family, that you take those things seriously as well, so that you don't end up with multiple different marriages with multiple kids from different people. None of those are optimal. Everybody who's ever been in those situations tells you essentially they're not optimal. I know, I have experience with it myself. So no, they're not optimal situations. So no, I don't think that as a society we should be pushing that as being optimal at all.
I have a quick question. If you're done with your line of questioning,
yeah, no, now it's my turn.
I just
now, hang on. Now it's my turn. I answered every single question asked.
Who decided that's your turn?
Hang on. Did I just not ask every question he had in his line of inquiry?
Yeah, but this is a follow-up on what Markus said. It's like,
yeah, I know, but I want to talk to Markus now, right? Because he just gave me an inquiry. I'd like to give him an
inquiry. The moderator can decide whose turn it is.
I think that Andrew, you make, but you have talked a majority of this debate, albeit I enjoyed it, but Alex hasn't, and Alex did want to make a point. I think
I'm not allowed to follow up with an inquiry. Just
you can totally follow up. I'm literally going to ask one or two questions, and that's all. Go ahead.
Hold that thought in your head.
Derail.
Do you think a single mother home is more or less successful than a home where the stepfather comes in?
I would say on average, it's probably less successful than even if you have a stepfather present.
Really? So you think that a woman by herself is going to do a better job than a woman who has a father figure who comes in and helps raise the kid?
No,
really?
the opposite.
Oh, okay. So okay, sorry, I misunderstood you. So you think that the stepfather home will do better?
Probably on average, I would say that's likely, but neither one of them are optimal.
Okay, understand that. All right, so Richy, being the kind soul that he is, why would he avoid single mothers if he joins that? If he joins that family, he can get a better outcome for the kids. You guys
in his case, hang on. You just asked me the question.
Go ahead.
Okay, so if you're discussing this in those terms, you would actually validate the duty that Richy has to have his own brood, and from his own brood, focus his highest duty on that. Why would that not be the case? That would be the most optimal position he could have.
But he's tried 4 years. Apparently, he's not able to. He said
what?
The only people he can get.
So who cares if it takes him a decade? Why would it matter if it took him a decade?
Okay,
why would it matter if it took him 20 years?
Let's do a hypothetical. Let's say Richy is barren. He cannot have kids on his own. In that case, should he then go ahead and marry a single mother and help raise the kid?
No, here's what I would do in the alternative. I would actually just live for the rest of my family. I have siblings that have plenty of children.
But why would you not give those?
Well, no, I would go. I would go live near them.
For one thing, maybe dude. I'm trying to answer the question, but he could have higher duties even than that. So he may have a duty that's of compellence of his church to stay chaste his entire life. He could have higher duties than marrying a single mom within his religious framework, which he does. So you don't understand how a duty breakdown works. You think that just because we say one thing, which is that, hey, this could be more optimal to not have X happen, that means it's the most optimal. That's not true. One, or that the duty breakdown is that you must do something. It's an ought that you have to. That's ridiculous too. We're talking about
you guys are hypocrites and you say one thing and do the other.
On what? What's the hypocrisy?
Like premarital sex, that's one.
What is the actual hypocrisy?
Are we going to get into this again?
You just said how do you bring this shit up? And then when I ask you about it, you say, I don't know.
Did you have sex with your wife before you married her?
Yes, it's not a hypocrisy.
110 IQ.
Okay.
Yeah, that's not a hypocrisy.
Before you married her, but people should avoid having premarital sex. Got it. Okay.
Oh, okay, got it. Hang on, Alex.
Move on to your line of question.
Hang on, Alex. Are you circumcised?
No.
No. Okay. Assuming that you were circumcised, would you advocate against circumcision?
If I was circumcised, would I advocate against circumcision?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know enough about circumcision to know whether it's bad or good.
Would you find a person to be a hypocrite if they advocated against circumcision, if they themselves were circumcised?
Well, that's a decision that wasn't made by you; it was made by your parents. So
what if it was made later in life by you?
If they made the decision and they regretted it? Well, yeah. I would probably be very suspicious of the motives, and I would say okay, well,
does it make them a hypocrite if they got circumcised at 20 to then advocating in circumcision, or isn't it? Is that a hypocrisy or is it not a hypocrisy?
Let me explain to you the difference. The circumcision,
it's a yes or no answer.
You would be, well, I'm not going to answer the way you want me to. With the circumcision thing or the drug thing, I'm about to answer. The circumcision or the drug example you like to use, the reason you would be advocate against that is because of negative outcomes, right? Hey, I got addicted to drugs. It cost me, my whole life. Hey, the circumcision thing, fucking made my penis bleed once a week, right? Because of negative outcomes.
The sex out of wedlock thing had bad outcomes. So I'm advocating against it, Alex. So what's the hypocrisy, you fucking moron?
What's having
hypocrisy, you stupid fuck?
Are you going to agree that having sex with your wife before you got married was a negative outcomes?
Yes, it was a negative outcome. It was
what was the negative outcome to fucking
Alex, are you going to answer the question, or are you going?
Yeah, well, he doesn't do that.
What exactly is the question?
The question is, does it actually make you a hypocrite to advocate against something that you yourself have done if you think that thing was bad in retrospect?
If it had a positive outcome, then yes.
Why would it matter if the outcome was positive or negative?
I think it makes a huge difference, because if it's a positive outcome, it just seems like someone who's virtue signaling and just wants his cake and eat it too. If it was a negative outcome, it's someone who's legitimately warning people against things that, you know, they find to be harmful in their life. It makes
so hypocrisy only works around the advocation of things which had a negative outcome on you.
Wait, hang on. What was the negative outcome to you having sex with your wife before marriage?
We were breaking our vows to Jesus Christ and our faith.
So you regret it?
Yeah.
Okay.
If I had it to do over again, I would not have ever had sex with my wife outside of marriage. And by the way, if she died tomorrow, I would not have sex with a woman outside of marriage. Period.
Amen.
Well, yeah, that'll be
so
pretty
tell
weird.
me what's the hypocrisy?
Girl.
Tell me what the hypocrisy is.
The hypocrisy is that you had premarital sex and now you're virtue signaling, telling other people.
But you just said that the only way that could be a hypocrisy is if it was a positive outcome for me. And I just got done telling you it was a negative outcome for me. So then it can't be a hypocrisy, can it, Alex?
Well,
You're
you
just
might have
wrong, aren't you?
You might have deluded yourself that's a negative outcome, but
okay.
the vast majority of people will view that as a positive outcome.
So how is it a hypocrisy if I view it as negative?
So bad that like you fucking had a heart attack or something like that. But I think 99% of people view it as a positive outcome, and they would look at that.
So Alex, I sinned. I repented of my sins and still do to this day for many sins, not just that one. And I'm going to continue to do that for the rest of my life because theosis is a process. So just try to hang on. Let me finish. I need you to state how I could possibly be a hypocrite for advocating against a thing which I just got done showing you and demonstrating to you had negative outcomes to me in my life. Why it would be that I'm a hypocrite? Explain it.
Okay. You're a hypocrite because you said one thing and you did another thing. I understand your argument that it was in the past.
Hypocrisy has changed now.
It was in the past, but that doesn't change the fact. Okay, if I sold a crypto coin, I made $1 million. And then 2 years later, I was talking about how NFTs are bad and you shouldn't do crypto. Would I seem like a hypocrite? Would you believe me? What if you gave a reason, Alex, and you said that the NFT is bad because you got all kinds of taxes and different things like this, and it created massive problems in your life, and so you advocate that people don't do that? Are you a fucking hypocrite then? Well, now you're talking about negative outcomes.
Oh, okay. So if I just gave you those and demonstrated those, but your response to me was, well, no, Andrew, because you did this thing that you're now advocating against, even though I gave you the negative outcomes, I just demonstrated them.
I just don't believe in any of the negative outcomes you mentioned. I think if you could do it again, you would do it again.
Okay.
I think you would do it again all day, every day.
Andrew, I think this is
what I see with like the hardcore religious people. They always do the opposite of what they say.
You mean actually religious people?
Always the opposite.
So I'm out cheating on my wife, Alex, because I'm doing the opposite of being faithful to my wife. I'm out cheating on my wife.
Hyperbolic. I'm not saying everything you're doing.
Well, I'm being hyperbolic too.
How?
Because I mean, if we're just going to talk in these like broad hyperbolic generalizations, you say you're going to be hyperbolic, I'll be hyperbolic right back. So the thing is, the answer is no. You have not demonstrated I'm a hypocrite, and you should retract it.
I think they started from Richy's statement about Judy, right? So he said he can't get any women that aren't mothers, essentially. And we said, well, if it's going to help the kids,
is that what I said? Is that what I said?
Yeah, you said you couldn't get anyone except single mothers.
Be fair,
exactly what you said.
Markus, that is not verbatim what he said, but you. So what?
He literally said, I can't get anyone in this dating market. Really quick, all I can get is single mothers.
I'm with you, Markus, but the notes that I had here was Markus said that at his age, the dating market is basically brutal. I wrote that down in quotes, so I know that was my thoughts. He also said that most of the women that he meets that are his age are already mothers, right? Which leaves, I guess, one to assume he means that's a negative thing. So move on. Sorry.
Well, he can
it's not ideal. Yeah, well, it's not ideal, dude. But put yourself in my shoes, right? Like you're in your 30s, and
I'm old.
Cool. And so your idea is like you want a wife that is fertile. Number one, 90% of the eggs dry up at 30, and yeah. So basically, I have to. Yes, it's true. Go look at Malini, and now I'm rhyming. But yeah, dude. What are you getting at here? I
But
can fuck.
your
I
number one
can.
duty is to have a kid.
I can fuck
No, it's not his
whores
number
if I
one
want
duty.
to.
Okay,
The number
it's
one
not
duty.
of
The
his
number
top
one duty
duties.
is the church. The number one duty
Okay.
is the representation of the way that the man represents the church and the woman as the body of the church. That's the number one reason for marriage. Procreation is maybe a second or third.
Okay, second or third, fine. I'll concede. Second or third. It's one of your top 3 reasons.
To get married. Yeah.
Yeah. So then why are you making excuses like women's eggs dry up and like why are you saying that? Like it's
They've
your
got
top duty.
kids.
Yeah, it's not an excuse, man. It's just where I'm at.
Okay.
Cool.
So wait. So hang on. So you're saying that Richy's failures, as he's adhering to his duties, which he considers his moral prism, are wrong because he's failed?
I'm not saying
That's-
his
that,
reasons
like-
are really
No,
wrong.
we're not saying
I'm-
he's failed. We're saying there's room for success that he's not taking. Was what I was curious about, right?
And what
I-
room
I
for
say that
success? What is your track record of getting people married, sir?
My track record? What are you talking about? I'm talking about
Better than yours.
Of getting people married?
From the
No,
sounds of it, Richy can correct me if I'm
All
wrong,
right.
but from the sounds of it, he's saying he could marry a virtuous woman, but she'd be a mother, and he can't find anyone that wasn't. He can correct me if I'm wrong, but that's essentially what he was saying.
No,
So
sir.
my
it's
question was, why
it's
don't you
certainly
marry
it's
her?
certainly difficult to find, dude. I don't know. All right, here. I'll speak in terms that you PUA guys can understand. I
Thanks,
understand
bro.
this.
Appreciate that, man.
Basically, my value,
arguments.
my sexual market value keeps increasing, and I'm hoping that I will be able to snag a fertile, younger woman. That's basically my best prospect to becoming a father and like being a
How does
virtuous
your
person.
sexual market value keep increasing? with
Yeah,
age?
what part of your
Because I keep
sexual
making
market
more
value?
money and fucking look at me.
Okay, fucking look at me. That's a great argument. You keep making more money. So are you going to lead with your wallet?
So
Do you wanna-
this is genuinely speaking like how.
Wait, Richard, are you going to use your
This is
money?
how sexual market value works. That's how
Are you
sexual
going to
market
use your
value
money
works.
to meet a girl? Is that you're going to leverage that?
Women are primarily concerned with resources. If you can't provide
And
resources,
why
for
is there a contradiction to
children.
say a virtuous woman would not be after security? That doesn't make any sense.
Well, he thinks that his
But
ability
he can
to
give
make
security
more
now,
money-
right?
Yeah,
He can
he's
give a
not
form of
trophy.
security, but that does not necessarily mean that he's going to not have to search for a long time for the type of Christian woman that he wants, that has the
So-
virtues that he wants, that's willing to give him the children he wants. That may be a search. It takes a while.
Let me
So you're
explain this.
telling me he
Well,
can't find someone because he doesn't have enough money.
I'm looking
That's why
for
this
a
is-
That's not what
diamond
was
in
just said.
the
Why don't
rough.
hang on?
Well, I'm
Stop.
curious, then
Stop.
what are you
Markus,
saying?
repeat my argument back to me that I just gave you. Repeat it back.
It sounded like you were saying that he needs more resources in order to find this virtuous
What was
woman
my
because
argument
that's what they
back?
want.
What was my argument?
That's what it sounded like you were saying.
I didn't say a word about that.
All right, well then, what were you saying?
Okay,
'Cause
so
that's
pay
what it sounded
close
like.
attention now so that
I'm
you can
listening.
get this correct. What
Try
I
use
said was
PDA
that
when
it could
you're-
take a long while for him to find a virtuous woman that fits the
Mhm.
criteria that he has for his very
Yes.
rigid ethical system. Why is
Yes.
that problematic?
He's indicating that it will be easier when his SMV increases, specifically his money. So we're asking,
Maybe
how is
so.
that actually going to help?
Because, of course, women who are inside of the purview of our moral system also understand the duties a man has to provide them with security and provide them with these other values.
But
That
Richie
doesn't
can already
mean
do
Can you not provide them with security right now?
that doesn't mean that there's not other options within the purview of these virtues. Doesn't mean that just because you have the virtues and the woman has the virtues that everything just lines up. That's
So these-
ridiculous.
so
This
these
is a
virtues-
ridiculous
so these-
standard.
So these virtuous women are going to be more likely to date Richie once he has more money, but they're virtuous women, right?
And it's
No,
just
that's
for
not what I
security.
said. That's ridiculous. What I said was that they may not align with the value structures. It could be any number of different reasons. However, he might consider his strategy for finding one of these women to take his time, accrue his resources, to give the maximum value to his family he possibly can when he does find that woman. What in the world could possibly be wrong with that?
I'm engaging with what Richie said, and he said that his SMV is going to go up, and that's going to be the big thing that's going to help him meet a wife. When I asked him about SMV, he specifically alluded to money,
What is
So-
SMV?
sexual
market value. And I'm sorry, is that not a factor, Alex?
I don't think money is going to help you accomplish your goal. No.
Yeah, I actually don't think money will help you. Like,
God bless
I
you.
really don't.
If you want a bunch of
If
sugar
you're
babies, then
continuing
yeah,
to get
that's not what you
older-
want.
You don't think money's going to
It's
help
gonna
you
be-
raise a family,
it's gonna
huh?
be more difficult.
Yeah, money's
Well-
not going to help with a family at all. That's
One
the
of the
most
most
insane
virtuous
thing I've
people.
ever
One of the
heard.
most virtuous people I know.
Family.
One
If
of
Richie's
the
broke,
most
then you're right.
virtuous
Andrew,
people I
if
one of the
Richie's
most
like
virtuous
200K
people
in
I know.
debt, then you're
One of the
correct.
most
But I don't think he
virtuous
is.
people. One of the most virtuous people I know is a family member of mine. I have a cousin and also my brother. They worked their fucking nuts off to acquire what they have. My cousin's actually a woman, beautiful woman, but her partner, similar in age, he's a bit older than me. They are multimillionaires living very virtuous lives, and they started early. They started having kids early. But absolutely, particularly with what's around the corner, like very soon, I think that the type of woman that I would be looking for would be interested in having a man that could provide a substantial amount of wealth for them. In fact, I think that if I were to find a woman that sort of just fell into my lap, I would basically look at them as a barfly. I wouldn't see it as
Okay,
You don't
you
feel like
want
you deserve
you
it,
want
you
a
just-
gold digger? I see.
Yeah.
no, you're
Doesn't
retarded.
sound like a virtuous woman.
Like
Do you feel like you're
retarded.
at this point in time? Can you not take care of a family? Do you not have the resources?
What
to
does
raise
that? It's a non sequitur, bro. It's a complete and total non sequitur. It's
Richie,
it's
are you not
irrelevant.
at a point right now where you could raise a few
saying there's a
kids? You
reason
don't have
he
the money
can't
yet.
find a
Because if
woman.
that's the argument, then we don't have a disagreement. If you're saying, "Hey, listen, man, I don't have any money right now, and I can't raise a family," then I'll say, "Okay, fair enough." But if your whole point is that, like,
my argument is that I haven't been able to find a virtuous woman that's fertile, particularly in my area, which is, well, whatever. It's not.
well, it
that's
seems like
fine.
the
It
main
doesn't
thing
have
that
nothing to
you
do
think
with
is going to help you with that is making more money.
Absolutely, it is.
No,
Yeah.
that's not what he said, though. What
That's
he's
what he
saying.
said right now.
No,
That's literally
and,
he just
and
repeated
I'll clarify. It's very simple what he's saying. He's saying that until he finds a virtuous woman, what is the problem with him accruing resources for the
No, that's not what
potentiality
he's saying.
of his future family?
That's
Why
not
would
what
that be
he's saying.
problematic?
That's not
There's
what
no-
he's saying.
Is that
We
not what you're
agree.
saying, Richie?
No, it's not what he's saying.
No, effectively, yes. Like if I found a virtuous
No,
woman now
yes.
that was,
All right.
if I found a virtuous
say
woman
virtuous.
now that was working and like was into me and whatever, like we could make a jive. Great, and we'll start
Richie,
building
but you would be a
family together.
barfly. She fell
But
into
I
your
want
water.
her, I
Richie.
want her to have the opinion that she's going to be a stay-at-home mother. She's going to multiply, and that's
Yeah.
really fucking tough right now. So like that's what weighs on my mind heavily when I'm looking for a mate, man. I don't know.
Okay, so what you're saying is
I
you
don't know
have
how
enough
that's like
money to
difficult to
raise a
understand.
family right now. Is that what you're saying? If that's what you're saying, then I get it. It's fine. But what you sounded like you were saying was that the more money you get, it's going to be easier to find a girl, and that's why you can't find a girl right now. If you're saying,
dude.
"Look, I don't have enough money to raise a family, so I'm not even going to look for a girl yet,"
Dude, this is
I
the
don't
most
get it.
sexually
hang on,
degenerate
Richie.
fucking.
Richie, let me restate
Oh,
this
what-
position
what's
the
that
best
answer?
way that I
Answer,
possibly
Richie.
can.
Andrew,
The position
with all
the
due
position
respect,
was simple. With all due respect, he's been cutting me off every time I have an inquiry with this other guy.
Captain
It's fine.
Save a Christian.
please, may
Captain
I?
Save a bro.
I will be fair, and I do have a good point. And if you disagree, then I digress. But to be fair, Richie and Markus specifically were having a back and forth interaction. I think that it would be I think that the integrity of the debate would be upheld most if Richie was able to speak for himself and actually clarify his point.
Oh, but it's not okay when I'm cross-examining Markus for him to speak for himself. Alex chimes in. That's bullshit. No thanks. So back to where I was at.
Hang on,
Let me
dude,
just,
you can't
let me just
fucking-
restate. Let me just restate this position because it's a simple position.
Let me not listen to the
Well,
moderator.
he's
Just do whatever the fuck I want. Dude,
It's
Richie's
all
a
in
grown
literature,
man.
I
Well,
said.
he's
We-
the
listen,
moderator
we
has
all
to be
know-
fair.
we
The
all know
moderator
Richie.
has to be fair.
We all know
Moderator has to
Richie.
be fair.
Richie,
Can
I'm
I-
sorry
Andrew wants to
that the
try to
moderator hurt your
save you.
feelings. Let Richie answer his own questions.
Can I speak?
Okay,
real
as
quick?
long as you promise that after that's done and I cross-examine Markus, you shut your mouth.
Me?
Sure.
Okay, then
No,
go
he's
ahead.
looking to Alex.
Andrew, to be fair, like I don't know. I feel like I've tried my very, very best to be on everybody's side. I like all of you guys except Richie. And at this
Well, it's a
moment,
contentious debate. Don't take any of this personally.
you know me. But I just genuinely mean what I say, and this is between Richie and Markus. And I think that I do think
And you did just hear that Alex said he's not going to say a word when I cross-examine Markus when this is done, right?
okay, perfect.
Right.
Then
I love everybody except Richie. Except
I-
let
I-
me
I will
interrupt when
I will
Richie's
swear an oath on the
Richie's main
Bible.
question.
Don't take it personally, Richie. I'm just talking shit.
Th- this
Don't
com-
take it
this-
personally when I talk
Single
shit about
mom over
single
here.
mothers.
Okay, relax, Richie. This comment perfectly sums up the issue at hand. What Marcus is trying to say.
Hold on. Is Marcus trying to ask the question, or are you asking the
Alex,
question?
Alex, to be fair, this is, but if we're
Yeah,
going
I
to
mean,
go with
I'll
this,
bring it up
it's gonna
again.
be
I'll bring it up
Marcus and
again.
Richie right now.
I
Richie,
won't say it.
what it
Nope.
sounded like, what you're saying, is that you can't find a virtuous girl right now unless she's a mother. But you said you're increasing your SMV, and that's what's going to help you find a woman. We asked, what was your SMV? You said money, right?
Put your
Go
well,
for it.
no, my SMV obviously isn't just money. I mean, I've like run circles around you guys logically. Like I'm obviously intelligent. I'm obviously better looking than both of you combined. Actually, if you
but your
combine
looks are
both of you,
decreasing. That's
if
my
you
point.
look,
They're not
if you
increasing.
put your looks, actually, if you put your looks combined, you might actually be an uglier person.
Richie,
It's hard to
you're
imagine.
such a
Richie,
you're such
listen,
a
you're
cat.
Why are
way
you
good
butting
looking.
in, Alex?
I'm also
Alex, why
funny.
are you butting
Alex,
in?
could you
Because I
fuck
can do
off?
whatever the fuck I
We
want.
just had the moderator interject.
Richie.
Oh, okay. Well, then if that's the
Richie,
case, then he
listen.
just threw the rules off, Mod. So let me restate his
Oh,
position
well,
Okay,
again.
so then I'm just gonna talk over you, and then it's gonna be a total shit show. So
Well,
we're
then,
not-
I mean, we'll do
Richie,
that
you're
because you
very
don't
good
want your
looking,
boy
but
cross-examined
you're not
by
gonna
me,
keep
Alex.
doing
You know it.
I don't care if cross-examined. It was just funny. He said that he referenced me. He said that he's better looking than me, and I'm making a joke saying that.
Agrees to the ground rules, breaks them immediately. Genius, Alex. Great look, bro.
To be fair, he was making a humorous comment. He wasn't coming in to save anyone.
You guys go at it. Let them do it. You guys shush. I'll shush too. I'll even quit with the faces.
I mean, Richie, if you want Andrew to come in and give his opinion on it, I don't mind. It's just that's.
Can you just shut
what
the fuck
said.
up while I talk? Like that's fine.
Wait, don't let him
Alright,
off the hook
So-
that
This
easy.
is probably why you don't have a goal, man. Just we're all
Alex,
chill, man.
mute.
It's all good.
Because I hate pickup artists.
You have a lot of hatred. Yeah, it feels that way.
Oh, I do. I hate Wicked. I'm not a big fan.
But what about Christ, bro?
What about not
Yeah, he
interjecting?
taught
as
us-
you
he
agreed
taught us-
5 times, bro.
Yeah. If you could just like
All right,
be
let's hear it.
honest
What do you got to say,
when you
Richie?
agree to it.
on.
Yeah, no, it's not the primary reason. There's a lot of different reasons. I've had crazy life shit happen to me, but whatever. It's like I'm not making excuses. The number one thing that I can find is that young fertile women, particularly attractive young fertile women, are looking for a level of a lot of things, like whatever. My best chance, if I meet that girl, right, and then it's like we just click, I wouldn't want to start a family with her immediately anyway if I wasn't secure enough in the future for creating those children. I think I could probably swing it just because of family connections, etc. But it's not even really it, man. Like I'm basically just focusing on gaining enough resources that I could start a family if it happened. And even more than that, what I've recently noticed is that living for myself, being selfish with my money is deleterious. It's corrosive to my soul. When I do things for other people, I notice that I have a much more of a benefit. And so my money goes to like saving. And if worse comes to worse, I really don't mind just being a good uncle figure to my dozens of nieces and nephews. It doesn't hurt me at all. And no, I don't think that as desirable as it is, whatever, I'm still a man. To have sex with easy pussy is just not desirable to me. Like it's not. I know that it would fuck me up in the end. I know that ultimately it's like it's just a soul thing, man. I don't know. I don't know how else to explain it. I
No,
know.
no,
I'm
it's-
sorry,
look,
I'm rambling, but I've been up
No, no,
since
it's
like
cool.
early.
No, it's 5 a.m. here for me, so I get it. No, yeah, I understand if that works for you, right? That's completely fine. It's just that earlier on in this debate, it seemed like you were forcing people to make a certain decision, right? And so right
I
now,
wasn't
I was saying,
forcing
like,
anyone. We were arguing
encouraging, right?
optimization, right? It's
Okay, yeah.
optimal.
And the reason I was bringing it up is it seems like it's more optimal for you to be with a single mother right now since you couldn't find anyone else, right? But if you're
No.
saying that's not the reason and it's just like you're not ready right now and you're working on things and you want to have enough money so you can support a family, then that's a different argument. I understand, but it's not what
It's
you're
interesting that this argument became about me. It's like typical PUA guys, but that's fine.
Saying. What do you mean by typical
I don't
PUA guys?
mind. Well, because you guys don't have arguments. against these like broader spectrum, like consistently throwing out, oh well, what about this? What about that? Naxalt, just nonsense, and you got crushed in your arguments. And so, what you typically like to do is you'll find a guy that hasn't been reproductively successful, and you'll say, oh well, here's what you need to do, Richard. You just gotta, because your followers.
I actually have no problem
POA
with you
followers.
not being reproductively successful. I don't, but it's like you were using your worldview to say that we should be having kids and it's our duty. Yet you didn't want to do it with single mothers. That's why I brought it up.
Well,
in my worldview, I don't mind if you don't have kids. I don't mind if you focus on your nieces, nephews.
Dude, we talked about this earlier. 40 times more likely to be sexually
I don't know
abused.
if you guys are done with the inquiry, right? Because it's getting circular. But if you are, I would like to move into my cross-examination.
Thank you, but with
that's
people
fine.
listening, there was still a lot of interest from the chat, and I think that Markus was just getting to a point.
Okay.
But Andrew,
It's
correct.
yeah.
Andrew,
I've
kind of-
kind of made my point. That's fine. If Richie wants to say anything else, he can. But I think I made my point.
It's whatever, dude. The internet is a fickle place, and people don't really watch debates to have their minds changed. They sort of watch their debates to have their positions reinforced. I hope that there's some possibility that some people are actually considering, like, hey, it's kind of fucked up. I guess don't be a bad example would be my life, and you could criticize that as much as you want. But I've been broadly open and honest, and
okay.
there it
Markus,
is.
I appreciate
Markus,
it.
is there anything else, any points with
No, that's cool.
that you wanted to kind of hone in on, or?
No, it's all good.
All right.
Okay. Markus, would you be willing to mandate your preferences on society?
Which preferences?
I don't know. Whatever preferences, doesn't matter. It's irrelevant to me.
Like people shouldn't kill each other preferences?
Whatever the preferences are.
Okay, yeah, preference what I would have is that people do not murder each other.
Okay, so that's one preference, right? So, and you have no trouble mandating those preferences on society, right? Because you believe that those things are optimal. It's optimal for people not to kill each other, murder each other, probably. Not kill, but murder.
That specific preference, yes.
And would you say the same thing about theft?
Yes, I would say the same
And would
thing
you
about
say
that.
the same thing about adultery?
Probably. I mean, probably.
All right, right. So, and why would adultery be
At
bad?
different levels, right? So,
Yeah.
if, yeah, I wouldn't punish anyone in terms of they should go to prison, if that's what you're asking.
Okay, so then you're
I
not
would
willing to
personally
enforce your
say-
preference.
I would personally say, no, I wouldn't enforce that preference. That's correct.
So what's wrong, though, if you know that it's wrong or immoral, which you just got done saying, for somebody else to enforce that preference? Why would that be wrong?
Enforce it on society or on themselves?
Enforce it on society. That if you're an adulterer, you go to jail. Why would that be wrong or immoral or bad?
Because in my worldview, I think there are going to be things that are optimal that we shouldn't punish, or that aren't optimal that we shouldn't punish. So, for example, like guns could be an example of that. I think societies with guns probably leads to more murders, probably leads to more people killing themselves, things like that. But at the end of the day, I think people should probably have the right if they choose to own guns, right?
Yeah, but why would it be bad to enforce
same
those
with free
things that are
speech.
optimal? Yeah, but why would not going into free speech be bad? That's my question, is I'm trying to figure out why these things in your purview, which you agree are bad, why it would be bad to enforce that they no longer exist. Why would that be a problem?
Because there are like positive and negatives to it. So if we're taking sex before marriage, for example, there are a lot of positives to have sex before marriage, right? There are some negatives as well. So for that reason, I wouldn't enforce it, right?
So it's all based around the consequences, right?
Consequences play a role, yes.
Well, what else would play the role? If you're saying that you agree that thing X is bad, but the consequence of enforcing it is worse, then you're really just looking at the consequences of the action, aren't you?
Sure.
Yeah. So if that's the case and consequences are what matter the most for you, then if it can be demonstrated to you,
just to be clear, there are consequences personally, there are consequences by
I get it.
community-based, there are consequences
I understand.
everywhere.
I understand.
Right?
So if whatever those criteria were, that it was proven to you that these things were bad within the purview of all of those different small nuanced criteria, that the outcomes were still bad, then you should advocate to enforce it, shouldn't you?
No, because I think, for example, like fatty foods, or like fast foods, like let's pick McDonald's or something. You could probably prove that it's negative for the individual. You can probably prove it's negative for the society, but I still feel like there's an element of like choice there that should be allowed.
Why?
So if the person
but
wants to
why
be able
though?
to,
That doesn't. Don't you understand? That doesn't follow for you to tell me. Listen, Andrew, what I care about more than anything is the consequence, and this is demonstrated when I go through an inquiry with you, and we find out that you're nuanced. Hang on, that your nuanced personal stop. The nuanced personal preference is the only reason you want to take away or don't want to take away choices if the consequence of taking away the choice is worse. Do you understand? That's the only reason you have an argument for what's bad and what's good.
Yes, but there's a negative consequence from taking away choice as well.
Okay, so can you tell me what the negative consequence of taking away the choice to eat a McDonald's fucking cheeseburger is?
Well, obviously that's a trivial example, right? But I think society-based...
Why is it trivial?
Because it's a cheeseburger.
Yeah, so what? That's my whole point. My whole point, though, is that why would it be bad to say no more McDonald's cheeseburgers under your purview when consequences are what matters? This is a problem with you guys. You're walking contradictions.
Choice, right? I think that's negative in itself.
You haven't demonstrated why taking away that choice would be a negative.
Because I feel like people should be allowed to eat whatever they want.
Because you feel. And that's what all of this always is with you guys. It's how I feel. You can't demonstrate any of this. None of it's consistent and it makes no sense. I don't give a shit how you feel about people eating cheeseburgers. Why shouldn't I enforce that McDonald's shut down tomorrow other than because it would make you feel bad? Markus?
So do you think we should not let people eat cheeseburgers?
No, that's beside the point. It's a non sequitur. What I'm asking specifically is
I'm asking if you...
Whether I believe that or don't believe that. This is an internal critique of your worldview. I'm trying to figure out.
I'm asking about your worldview. Do you not share the same worldview as me?
No,
I don't share the same worldview as you. And you can ask me about my worldview in just a second. And I will answer all of your questions you have when we're done. We're almost done. I promise. I just need this answered for me. What would be the huge negative societal impact against choice for me to say nobody else could ever have a McDonald's cheeseburger again? What would be the actual problem?
Is that there's no inherent value.
You're not answering my question. You're just trying to turn it.
You don't think there's any inherent value?
I will answer that question as soon as you answer mine. It's my inquiry. So answer my question.
You're asking me why choice is good in our society.
I know. I'm asking you why that specific choice, the specific choice of the McDonald's cheeseburger, if it's enforced that nobody else can ever eat another McDonald's cheeseburger, that choice is taken away from them. Why in the world would that be a bad thing, Markus?
I think in general, our society is probably going to do better if we give people these types of choices. So it could be a cheeseburger, it could be the type of treatment they have at hospital, whatever it is, right? Or if they want to get a tattoo or if they want to get an ear piercing. I think having individualized choice actually improves society in general.
Do you? Do you think that you have a choice to blow a stop sign?
But this is where I was saying where there's certain choices you can and certain choices you can't. I don't feel like you have the choice to go murder someone because the consequences of society. I think when we add choice in society, in the general scheme of things, there's better consequences. And obviously some of those choices we have to restrict, like blowing a stop sign or drink driving.
Or not eating a cheeseburger at McDonald's. Because if we're trying to be consistent here, Markus, you're still just saying the same exact thing, which is if the negative outcome, if the negative outcome
is very different than me killing someone.
I didn't say that it wasn't. However, you blowing through a stop sign at 2 a.m. when there's nobody on the road, probably not a big deal, but you should probably still stop, right? You should probably still stop because the potential consequence is bad, just like the eating of the cheeseburger.
But you're potentially killing someone. When I get a cheeseburger, there isn't a chance that I run into someone going to a stop sign and murdering
Wait a second. The massive industry, which is McDonald's and this and that, which is responsible for a massive obesity epidemic, amongst other things, which you would concede is true. These are all terrible. Where'd he go? What happened?
Oh, no. Sorry, I'm still here, man.
These are all terrible outcomes for all of these people. These are terrible outcomes for everybody. And yet you still, you seem to just optimize your choice based on arbitrary preference. This is my whole problem. It's my whole issue. And you really haven't reconciled that, Markus.
Yeah, I would say it's. Sorry, give me 1 second.
Sure.
I would say there's levels to this. So if you could prove to me that McDonald's, for example, is causing a huge detriment to society, and it's absolutely fucking ruining it, and that a bunch of people are dying and it's really horrible, then that probably would be something that I'd want to punish somehow, whether it be taxes or just outlawing it in general. Yeah, sure, right? But if cheeseburgers make some people a little bit fat, or people eat cheeseburgers and are completely fine and have a healthy diet, and they can make that choice, then yeah, that's probably something that I wouldn't restrict in my worldview.
So these are all.
If you can prove to me that if you could prove to me that sex before marriage completely ruins society, right? If you were able to prove that, I'd probably agree. But you haven't, and
we have. So that was my. So that's where I wanted to get to, and I appreciate so much that you brought that up, because that's where we were trying to get to. So I have demonstrated that no-fault divorce, which was the topic of this, has indeed radically raised single motherhood. Women are responsible. No, not only that, I sent over multiple studies. Alex can put them in the private chat now.
0 studies.
They're in the private chat right now.
Just trouble them.
The proof is on you, Andrew.
I mean, yeah, dude.
What else can I possibly do? I sent them all.
Do you want me to take 20 minutes off the stream and go through the studies?
No, my whole point is that this was demonstrated. Not only that, it's been logically demonstrated over and over again that the single motherhood pandemic, which is currently, hang on, let me finish, and then I'll give it back. I'll give you the floor for your inquiry.
Miserable.
Let me just finish, and I'll give it back. You can make whatever inquiries you want then, Marcus. I promise. But it has been demonstrated. We did logically demonstrate it, and I sent over tons and tons of evidence. The correlatory is so overwhelmingly strong that no-fault divorce has led and is a massive contributing factor in the single motherhood pandemic, which then trickles down to, again, let me read you the stats. Hang on. Let me read you the stats. And you tell me if you dispute any of these. 89% of kids do not have who are in a psych ward do not have an intact family. Fatherless homes. 90% of homeless kids, fatherless home. 85% behavioral disorder, fatherless home. 70% of kids in juvenile hall, fatherless home. 71% of teens. No, don't say nothing. Let me finish. And then again, I said you can have the whole floor. You can have the floor. 71% of teens in rehab facilities, fatherless home. Single motherhood, obviously, there is no dispute that single motherhood is the cause of these problems without the intact family. You can't even dispute that. It's impossible.
There's no dispute because Andrew says there's no dispute.
Let me just answer this. It is crazy because if you have an intact family, they're probably going to be more happy, more well put together, and have better outcomes. If you have a single mother, there's probably divorce for a reason. Now, if you take all those single mothers again,
we've already been through this.
To stay in a relationship, it doesn't seem like these
fucking
kids are
feminist talking points, bro.
Literally,
feminist talking points.
The man, if you force a man to be in a relationship.
Go ahead with your inquiry. I promised I'd answer whatever questions you have. Go ahead.
Let's get into closing thoughts after Marcus is done.
Go ahead, Marcus.
Yeah, all I'm saying that is if all you're comparing are intact families versus single mothers, we're going to assume those single mother families, they've got divorced for a reason, right? So they probably already have shit going on within that family. But what I'm saying is if you now create a situation where you have parents that are bickering, that hate each other, that it's awful, and then you force them to stay together, whether the guy, whether the girl, then I don't think that's going to lead to good outcomes. And I think what we spoke about before, the ability to have a choice that we both agreed is important. I think they should both have a choice to leave that relationship if they're miserable and aren't enjoying it.
Those are literal feminist talking points, and I demonstrated for you.
I'm a feminist, okay?
Apparently you are, because I demonstrated to you
feminist.
That pre-no-fault divorce, these marriages stayed intact, and there was not these massive abuses going on in these homes. There was none of that. We know this because of the outcomes of the people who were produced by those marriages. We know the dynamics
of marriages have changed a lot, right? We know that.
Thanks to
many
you
other variables.
Advocating for promiscuity and being a feminist, like the rest of the feminists, advocating your same feminism.
Marcus, we're the reason the kids are being abused. It's me and you, buddy.
Feminists are fine. Brilliant.
Yeah, we're
causing
big brain stuff.
Unironically, yes.
Yeah, we have more virtue signaling. Okay.
Yep.
He just agreed he was a feminist. What are you talking about virtue signaling?
He's joking, dude. He's fucking with you. Can you not pick up on basic sarcasm?
Well, I guess in the future, you shouldn't make feminist talking points, then claim that you're a feminist and say it's irony, bro, because that's fucking stupid.
because I say one thing that you think a feminist would agree with me on, it makes me a feminist.
No, all of your talking points have been feminist talking points. In fact,
All of them. Okay.
yeah, all of them. I can't even think of
Literally.
one
It's
argument
true.
that you have
Wait,
made that
Marcus,
was
it's
not a
true
feminist
because
talking
Andrew
point.
said it was true, so it's got to be true.
Yeah.
You can't even
I must
argue
be a
with it.
feminist.
You
It is
can't
true.
argue with it. It's a fact.
Alright.
You
Andrew
think the
said it.
audience doesn't see that?
Andrew
They
said
do.
it. It's a fact.
Let's
It's
go.
a fact. All right, so
Demonstrated.
do you have any more things you want to get to before we get to closing?
Yeah,
thoughts?
I'm open for inquiry.
good.
I promised I would be.
I don't have any more questions for you, honestly. If Marcus does,
I didn't think
No,
so.
I'm good, man.
Question from the
I
chat.
can come up with some if you want me to.
The chat, many people in the chat have wanted to know, are you planning on opening the panel at all, or are we doing closing thoughts and then heading out? Deal.
And I'm fuck. Okay, we can do like 20. It depends on what the rest of you guys think.
I can't, guys. I have other stuff to do this evening. I do appreciate very much the debate. I'll stick around for like super chats and stuff. I think that's totally fair, but I have my own chat, my own show to get back to after the debate is done, and I have my own super chats, and guys, I got to take care of on my end. So
yeah. Okay. So closing thoughts.
Yeah. Who wants to go first?
I'll go first.
Okay.
Yeah, fuck it. Effectively, everything boiled down to in this debate, Naxalt. Not all X are like that. Every logical position that was presented by Andrew and I was totally refuted by, well, actually, there are single moms that do this, or actually, people will operate in this. I couldn't find a logical argument in the entire debate that we had, and it varied greatly. We would go from marriage to like every single point that was made. It was always a pivot, and then okay, so when I brought up single mothers having children that were 40% more likely to be physically or sexually abused, it was all just sort of hand waving. Well, I know single mothers that whatever, man. My mother was a single mother when I was 12. Okay, like I understand that there are exceptions, but you never actually addressed the arguments at all. You took no responsibility for the negative repercussions of your actions, because truthfully, down to your core, everything is an excuse and I know that you don't perceive it this way, but this is how I perceive your arguments. Everything is an excuse for your hedonism. Everything is basically around how much pleasure can I get out of things. It has no serious purpose. You have no serious like pillars or foundation for the way that you think that you do outside of literally your physical feeling. Even down to Marcus talking about, oh, well, I need to have oh, well, sex is great. Good sex is good. Even to the point where like I can't actually get married to a woman if we don't have sexual compatibility. But then he would sort of like make this like woo excuse of like, oh, well, cuddling on the pillow and then like we touch each other's hair and scratch it feels good. Even that, which sounds good to a woman, by the way, particularly a young woman, that it's like, oh, he really cares about me. And it does feel good. Don't get me wrong. Like I understand like that connection between men and women. It does feel good, but it's like, it's still just pleasure. There's nothing there. Like there's nothing. There's no morality. It's literally just pleasure. Hedonism. That's it.
Thank you, Richy.
Can I go next?
Of course.
All right. So the debate strategy with Andrew and Richy is basically, I have a grounding from my worldview. So I'm right. That's the common argument I hear over and over and over.
Cut out.
You did.
Alex.
I didn't know if it was just me.
Okay,
no, it was God, actually. God cut you out.
I'm sure it was. Okay, anyway, so the debate strategy with Andrew and Richy is basically, I have a grounding for my worldview based on a 2,000-year-old book filled with fiction, and you don't, so I'm right. Also, the level of hypocrisy and virtue signaling here was off the charts. We have a guy who accuses Markus of being primarily obsessed with pleasure, who chain smokes and drinks, who says that premarital sex is bad, who had premarital sex with his wife, allegedly other women. Then we have a guy who believes marriage is one of the most important things, yet he has been single for 4 years. He says he wants a virtuous woman, yet the main thing he believes will help him with that is making more money. You guys the hypocrisy, you literally can't make this shit up. But I will give props to both Andrew and Richy for coming on. It was a fun discussion, and I enjoyed having it.
I'd like Andrew to go next. That way we have one from one side, back and forth. Is that okay with you, Andrew?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, so this is absolutely hilarious. We didn't talk about our groundation belief at all till it was brought up to us. All I did was a basic internal critique on this guy's worldview and what he thought about things. And we found that most of this is feminist style talking points. I didn't talk about grounding Christian ethics. I didn't talk about any of that. That was brought up by my opponent. In fact, I was happy to keep it within whatever purview he wanted. And when they requested we move on, I was happy to do that too. That's all cope bullshit. That's one. Second, as we walk through this, try to understand that they demanded data. We handed them data. Still wasn't good enough. They demanded logical arguments. We gave them logical arguments. Still wasn't good enough. They tried to convince us that sex, that they're going out and having sex with tons and tons of skanks. Markus says because he wanted a physical connection with a woman, to look into her eyes, to gaze into, to have an emotional connection, had nothing. The sex, that was like that, that wasn't even, that's not even really a priority. It's not even really a big deal for him. That's like secondary bull fucking shit. That's three. Now, moving on from there, when we get into Marx's worldview, makes no sense. He's a consequentialist. He's absolutely not consistent with any of the things that he says, with things that he advocates for. Makes no sense whatsoever. Also, for anybody to challenge that no-fault divorce, a thing which we have tons of data on. I mean, it's astronomical and overwhelming, the data we have on single moms and no-fault divorce, and to challenge that with a feminist talking point of, but some women might be getting mistreated in their marriage, is fucking ridiculous. We know this because we can look at the patterns before no-fault divorce, and this was not happening. They weren't being abused. They weren't being beaten up. None of that shit was going on any more than it is now. And the outcomes for the children were far better. They couldn't refute a word of what was said. They literally couldn't refute any of it. Now, do I have a problem with Markus? No, right? You invite me to a debate. I'm a debater. We're going to have it out. That doesn't mean I have any personal animosity towards you, Markus. And I'm happy that you came on and had this discussion. And as with Alex, it's always a pleasure, always happy to discuss these things with you. I have no animosity towards either of you guys. However, debates are aggressive. They're brutal. We're going to get down in the dirt. And also try to remember this last thing, which is that Alex says there's massive hypocrisies on my side. I was willing to yield that there possibly could have been. So we got into his definition of hypocrisy, which changed 3 times. Not only did it change 3 times, but when I literally sat him down and said, now show me how I'm a hypocrite, all the examples he'd come up with showed that I wasn't a hypocrite. These people are fucking nuts. They don't know what the hell they're talking about. And I was glad to come in and wreck both of them handily. So anyway, thanks, guys. I appreciate that very much.
All right, Markus.
All right, the hedonistic PUA feminists. This is my view. So essentially,
that's a good save, Markus.
Yeah, appreciate you, man. And don't worry, I love you too, Andrew. Don't worry. Yeah, essentially, just restating the point. Sex before marriage, I don't think is a problem whatsoever. I think it does allow you to cuddle, look deep into someone's eyes, and actually build a further connection. Of course, the sex is also amazing. You get to tie girls up, you get to have fun, you get to explore your kinks. But at the end of the day, you get to find out whether you're actually compatible with this girl or not. And sure, there's a big difference between fucking around quite a lot or meeting someone, getting to know them, having sex, and then if you want to get married, get married. In terms of the no-fault divorce, I was actually never shown stats. I know you sent them to Alex, but you never sent any to me. Even if divorce was to go up a little bit, I still don't think this shows that it is going to be more beneficial if you take people that fucking hate each other, a guy that can't stand this woman and just wants to get away from him, and make him stay in that relationship. It's a good thing. I'd rather give the guy a choice, or, sorry, I'm a feminist, I'd rather give the girl a choice to be able to leave. So that's my thoughts, and thanks everyone. I appreciate you all.
Patriarchy all the way. She gets no choice. They get no choice. No, I'm kidding. I'm joking.
Yeah, no,
they get whatever choice they get the choice that we give them. I think that's.
I do want to say that there's people in the chat saying like, "Oh, you and Andrew no longer friends." No, we're still friends. This is all just debate. Whatever blood sports.
I have literally no problem whatsoever.
There's no hard feelings
with Alex at all, and I'm sure that we'll have future conversations where me and him will be on the same side, wrecking feminists. The one thing I'll say about the red pillars, including all of you out there in Alex's chat, I agree with 90% of the descriptive claims that you guys make. That's why I broadly consider a lot of the red pillars to be allies in the same type of conflict that I'm engaged with the progressive left and feminists. Just don't agree with their prescriptions, which is why we're kind of tangling up on a lot of those today. I find Alex to be a very thoughtful, good man. At least he's always been decent to me. I have absolutely no issues with him personally, but I'm not here to be nice to him. I'm here to kick his ass in a debate, and that's what I did.
Andrew, would like to plug your channel, tell viewers where they can find you, and also, will you be streaming after this? I know you said super chats. You're going to open the panel. What's your plan?
Yeah, so over on my channel, of course, I'm going to field every single super chat which came in on both YouTube and on the Dono chat side. Appreciate all the great support. Thank you again, Alex, for hosting this fine debate and inviting me. I sure hope that you continue to invite me to panels, as I'll continue to invite you to debates and panels as well. Appreciate Markus taking the time out of his day to go through and do this. I'm just going to vet all the questions like I always do, talk to the people on my own chat, and I appreciate it very much, guys.
Cool. Thanks for coming on. Markus, do you want to plug your channel as well?
Yeah, man. Ultimate Man Project. You can find out how to slay some bitches there, Richie, and also Orgasmic Bliss Coaching, where you can find out how to look lovingly into people's eyes as you have sex.
Yeah, guys, check out Markus's
Title
channel.
afterwards.
He's one of the very, very few people who I will say is 100% legit. I've said this in the past. I think his cold approach is way better than mine. I think his infield is super valuable. So check it out. Definitely subscribe. It doesn't hurt to subscribe to 2 channels. So check it out. They have a lot of good content. Text game as well.
Cheers.
Cheers. All right, guys. Appreciate y'all. Good night.
Thank you. Thank you so much.